Hey, Ethan. I'd like to call to order the Gig Harbor City Council meeting of Monday. Just a moment. For some reason, I have March 8th in my council book.
March 22nd.
I'd like to call to order the Gig Harbor City Council meeting of March 22nd, 2021. It's 5:30. Due to public health concerns, this meeting will be accessible by phone by calling 253-215-8782 and entering the meeting number 932-1605-6382. Or you can Zoom it, which to the address we've provided on our website. Comments are only allowed during designated portions of our meeting, public comments. To speak during this at that time, press the raise hand button near the bottom of your Zoom window or press number 9 on your phone, *9. Please refrain from raising your hand until the mayor has announced that he has opened the public comment portion of the meeting. Your name or your last 4 digits of your phone number will be called out when it is your turn to speak. When using your phone to call in, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. All speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Some people may have wanted to submit public comment by writing in, and they had to do so by 3 p.m. to the city clerk's office Monday afternoon. All written comments must be able to be read within 3 minutes and must be included in the record. And they must be of the topic of the council bill unless it's under non-agenda items. I'd like to call to order, so please say here after I call your name. Councilmember Abersol.
Here.
Councilmember Dinson.
Here.
Councilmember Franich.
Here.
Councilmember Himes.
Here.
Councilmember Markley.
Here.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Wook.
Here.
And this is Mayor Kuhn. From our staff, City Administrator Bob Larson.
Here.
Community Development Director Katrina Knudsen. I think she was excused tonight. Chief Kelly Busey.
I'm here.
Great. Public Works Director Jeff Langhelm.
Here.
And we have City Clerk Molly Townsley.
Here.
Assistant City Clerk, Open Government Administrator Josh Decker.
Here.
Okay. And our City Attorney tonight, Carly Sand.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Sand,
Sorry.
and I'm here for Daniel Kenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Sorry. And Labor Attorney Sophia O'Maybe.
I'm here.
Thank you. We have guests tonight. We have the Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Warren Zimmerman. Welcome. Downtown Waterfront Association Board President Chuck Cusetto. Downtown Waterfront Alliance Executive Director Mary Damaris. Farmers Market Manager Heidi Gilling.
Burling. Yes, very close.
Thank you. And Sara McDonald, past Parks Commissioner, and Ethan Nash and Michael Nash from Nash Consulting. So welcome, everyone. Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do I have any changes to the agenda? Okay, agenda stands. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I've got a second by Councilmember Abersol. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes 7-0. We have 3 presentations tonight. The first one is the Chamber of Commerce, the Visitors Center Year-End Report. Executive Director Warren Zimmerman. Go ahead, Warren. Thank you for joining us. Let's see, Warren, are you there?
I think you might have dropped off, Mayor. This is Bob. I saw his camera freeze up earlier.
Okay, we'll have him do like the second presentation. I'd also like to acknowledge Lauren Pettit from our Tourism and Communications Director. Welcome. Is there any other staff members that I joined us or failed to mention? Okay.
Finance Director Dave Rodenbach.
I'm sorry, Dave, thank you. Finance Director Dave Rodenbach. Okay, so we are going to go on with Downtown Waterfront Association year-end report. Board President Chuck Cusetto and Executive Director Mary Damaris with the help of Heidi. Go ahead with your presentation.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to City Council members. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Chuck Cusetto, and I am honored this year to be president of the Gig Harbor Downtown Waterfront Alliance. So Kit already mentioned that Mary Damaris, our extraordinary executive director, is here tonight, as are Josh Sherwin and Heidi Gerling, our fantastic Main Street staff. So first up, I want to thank the City Council and the Mayor for your support, your financial support of the Downtown Alliance, the direct support as well as the LTAC support. Want to thank you for allowing Bob Larson to serve on our board. It continues to strengthen the relationship between the Alliance and the city. And I want to thank you for the actions that you've taken this year that have helped the Alliance and have helped all downtown Gig Harbor businesses. Some of the things that you've done have allowed us all to be in business still, and that's really important. So you made it all possible. I also want to call your attention to the fact that our annual report should be in your support materials, and it'll probably answer most of the questions that you have. Like all of us, 2020, like all companies, 2020 has been a pretty difficult and a pretty different year for us. It's caused us to revisit what we do, to look at everything, to refresh, redirect, and to reinvent ourselves a lot. As Mary would say, what it's done is it's caused us to pivot. And so I'm fortunate enough, I get to pivot to Mary, and she's going to do a brief recap of 2020 for you, and then we'd certainly be glad to take some questions. So Mary, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us join you this evening. So the Alliance started 2020 having just finished a very successful 2019, and we were ready to hit the ground running. On February 8th, we held our sip and stroll, our winter sip and stroll. We had over 500 people attending, and they were all downtown tasting and sampling and doing a lot of shopping while they were down there. On February 27th, we held our annual meeting and volunteer appreciation event with over 100 people in attendance. We presented awards to downtown businesses. Specifically, we gave the Golden Voyage Award to the Beach Basket for having been in business for over 50 years. We honored outgoing board members, and we welcomed new board members, and we celebrated the many volunteers that make up the backbone of the Downtown Waterfront Alliance efforts. We had a theme of We Are Main Street, We Are the Alliance. We shared this because we wanted people to understand the connection that the Downtown Waterfront Alliance, as your Main Street organization, has with the National Main Street and the Washington State Main Street. In early March, we held our third annual Restaurant Week. It was a great success. We had 7 businesses downtown participating in that, and all of them reported increased business during that time. So we moved into March looking forward to another year of serving and supporting our wonderful community. And then March 17th hit. That was the day that the Alliance closed its doors and began working remotely. So many questions. What did lockdown mean? How long was it going to last? What would our businesses need? What could we do to help them? So we scrapped the 2020 work plan and focused on new ideas and a plan to implement them. We began our 2020 pivot with a goal to be a vital partner and resource for the downtown core. Almost immediately, we created a closed Facebook group for our downtown businesses where we could quickly disperse information about loans and grants, governor's updates, health department updates, and where our businesses could in turn safely share their concerns and their fears and their tears and suggestions. Fortunately, we had just redesigned our waterfront website, And we are utilizing a platform that was much more easily updated. This became a huge benefit as updates were happening daily and sometimes even hourly. We created a COVID-19 resource page with specific information for our businesses as well as for our consumers. This is an example of one of the consumer pages. It's all the restaurants downtown, and it's been an ongoing project of changing what each services were being provided by each of the restaurants. We're happy to say that there are going to be more and more services as we're moving forward on this. As businesses started to reopen, even at a small rate, we started the Gig Harbor Safe Harbor campaign to help people understand that coming downtown was going to be a safe experience for them. We provided posters and signage and mask information, and we also provided hand sanitizer to our businesses. And of course, we purchased that at Heritage Distilling downtown. We focused on shopping and dining locally, and during this time of people not coming downtown, we did whatever we could to get downtown to the people. Make a Difference Day was done in partnership with the Rotary Club of Gig Harbor, identifying a group of businesses that they could go and shop, and that lasted for 14 weeks throughout the summer. It was similar to the old cash mobs, where they would identify one business to visit, but we didn't want to have that many people gathering, so that was how we worked on that one. Treasures on the Waterfront is a fairly new video series that we're producing now that is highlighting all of our individual businesses downtown. This has been a great success. This is going to be going on through 2021. Merchants are hearing comments, "I saw the video about your business, so I had to come and see you." So as I said, this will be an ongoing project. So sadly, Girls Night Out, our famous Girls Night Out event in November, was canceled, as were all of our holidays events. So we wanted to create something that could still get people safely downtown. So Passport to the Holidays became a reality, and it was a very successful shopping and dining event. We had over 600 passports returned, and a number of businesses actually reported that their numbers for December 2020 were better than December 2019. We also wanted to offer a bit of normalcy to our community. 30+ volunteers helped maintain our beautiful summer flower baskets last year. And that is a project that I have to say is a great partnership with the city. Kudos to Public Works, Jeff, thank you, you guys are wonderful. It's a key to our success. So another piece of normalcy was our farmers market, and I'm going to turn this over to Heidi to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mary. I too want to thank Public Works for an incredible partnership we have with you in the summer for the farmers market. It's invaluable. In 2020, the Waterfront Farmers Market was deemed as an essential business, so we were able to open. That being said, the market followed all the COVID regulations that were put forth to farmers markets from the CDC, the WSDA, the USDA, the Washington Department of Health, the Washington State Farmers Market Association, and the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department. So these regulations included, but are definitely not limited to 6-foot booth spacing, 6-foot social distancing with patrons, controlled attendance on how many were in the market at a time, required masks, a single entrance and a single exit point with mandatory hand sanitizing or hand washing at the entrance. The market saw an average of 25 vendors and an average of 1,000 customers per week. We had 239 volunteers giving 656 hours of their time to the market in 2020. And even with all the regulations in place, we were able to offer something vibrant and a piece of normalcy back to Gig Harbor. The market was both honored and delighted to have been the recipient of the 2020 Excellence on Main Community Partnership Award. This was presented to us by the Washington State Main Street Program, and we are so appreciative of the partnership that we have with the city in continuing to bring this really popular project to the community. So thank you very much. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Heidi. So the impact of this pandemic has been more and much longer than we could have imagined when we locked our doors on March 17th. But the good news is it is temporary. It's taken tenacity, trust, and a lot of transformation to get our downtown through a very difficult year. We've relied on partners like the city's ongoing support of the Alliance and the policies made to keep our downtown restaurants and shops at optimal capacity. That's all played a key role in keeping our downtown the way we all love it. We made the decision to keep the Alliance as strong as ever and fully staffed with the expectation to hit the ground running as the world opens up again. As we put 2020 behind us, we know we're all moving forward together and we're looking ahead optimistically to a time of recovery. I would encourage you to look through the annual report that's in your packet for additional details of our efforts over the last year. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to share and for your continued support.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Chuck and Heidi. Appreciate it. Are there any questions from council? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you all very much. We're proud of all the hard work and all the volunteers. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have Warren Zimmerman back?
Mayor, Warren was not able to reestablish his internet connection, but he is one of the callers, so he's prepared to give his report verbally if we want to recognize him over the phone.
Did he have a PowerPoint?
He did, but we were having a lot of technical issues getting it pulled up.
Okay. All right. Maybe he can share the PowerPoint with the council and myself later on. We'll ask him. Warren, are you there?
Sorry.
Hi, Warren.
Hello, I'm here.
We can do it a couple ways. If you can either go ahead and just verbally give it, or you can do it at another meeting, whatever works for you best.
Well, I apologize. First of all, we actually had it up and running earlier, and for some reason the internet downtown has dropped my Wi-Fi, so I had to call in. But I'm happy to give you a verbal if that's okay with council.
Sure. Why, is it possible that you can later send us the PowerPoint so we can look at it at a later date? Great.
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
So this is the Commerce, the Visitor Center Year-End Report, Executive Director Warren Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mayor Kuhn and council members. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I hope that I can convey the message to you verbally as well as I would have been had we been able to give you the presentation. First of all, 2020 was a very traumatic year for everyone. It happened to be the Chamber's 40th anniversary. Fortunately for us, we were able to celebrate that prior to the pandemic starting. And one of the things I wanted to just talk about briefly is we had 4 members of the Gig Harbor Chamber who have actually been members for 40 years. That include Peninsula Light, Connie Schick Flooring, which is now CS Flooring, Ace Hardware, and the Tides Tavern. So we gave those members recognition at our luncheon back at the beginning of 2020. During the course of the year, the Chamber set up on our website a COVID-19 resource that people in the community could go to. It included a lot of different pieces of information, business resources, pandemic news, governmental updates, funding resources that were available, recently vaccine information, and then a number of different family resources. We worked really hard to get that information out to the community, and like Mary and her group, we had a great response to that information. We just became the conduit between all of these different organizations and the community here, not trying to interpret what was going on, but giving people the ability to easily access the information and be able to interpret it and use it for their own personal business needs. The other thing that we've been very successful with during the pandemic has been the Chamber's Public Affairs Forum. As most of you probably are aware, having attended it in the past, we started that meeting at 7:30 in the morning. With the pandemic, we decided to go at 8:30 instead to give people an opportunity to relax a little bit before 7:30. And what we found, we put it on Zoom and we increased our attendance by about 50% for most of the year. There were times when we had between 80 and 100 people, and I would say the norm now is probably between 50 or between 45 and 60. When we were doing it live, we were looking at somewhere between 35 and 45. So that program's been very successful, and it's continued on through the pandemic. And we are seriously looking at the possibility of providing that in the future after the pandemic in both virtual and in presence for people who want to attend. As for the year publications, we created a recovery reopen guide. We worked on that with a number of other chambers around the state. I think Mary may have gotten a portion of that as well. We distributed that early on in the pandemic, both digitally and hard copy if people wanted to pick up a copy from us. We most recently distributed our profile guide. As most of you know, the city puts together a visitor guide a number of years ago. We transitioned that away from the chamber to the city marketing department, and we maintained the profile magazine, which basically is intended to provide information to individuals and businesses who are considering possibility of relocating to Gig Harbor. So that 100-page magazine became available at the end of January, and it's also online, and we thank everyone who participated in that. We also did the business visibility program at the chamber, small businesses, the heartbeat of our community. We used hashtag Gig Harbor Local, and a lot of other organizations as well as the chamber took advantage of that and put it out there. Most recently, we've been working on business visibility, and we've recently done a whole program and series this month on women in business. So let me jump over now to the Visitor Center. Just a little history for those of you who may not be totally familiar with the Visitor Center. It was actually constructed in 1961 by the Gig Harbor Lions Club, and it was property that was donated by the Bogue family. In 62 through 81, it was the Gig Harbor Library, and it was the only library we had. In 1981, because the Pierce County Library opened, that building was donated to the city of Gig Harbor. And from 81 to 97, the Chamber of Commerce actually occupied the building. In 97, the city needed the building because they were outgrowing their old space. So they moved the city planning department in, and they occupied it until about 2002. After that, it became a visitor center again, and it was manned by staff from the city. Karen and Lorene Lund managed it. In 2005, the city approached me and asked if the chamber would be interested in relocating again to the building, and that's when we moved back to the visitor center. Let's see, I'm going to skip some of these. Changes during the pandemic. Prior 3 full-time, 1 part-time, and about 16 volunteers. We had to eliminate all of the volunteers, and we are down to 2 full-time and 1 part-time person at the chamber. During the pandemic, we were closed for about 7 weeks in April and May. We reopened as soon as we could, following all the procedures and sanitation requirements, and we've been open ever since. We've seen an increase in the kiosk traffic. We've had a lot of telephone questions that we've been fielding through the chamber, And we've had an increase recently in the number of visitors who are actually coming in person. I have some charts that I'm not going to try to explain to you without you having the ability to see them. But I would just simply say that for the last quarter of this year, we were running at about 100 individuals per month coming through the chamber. So I'll get that chart to you so you can see it. The trends that we've seen during COVID, there's been still constant requests for local maps, people wanting to know what's open, visitors and residents looking for outdoor activities that they could participate in. They wanted to know more about parks and locations. They wanted to know where they could find parks with tables, places to eat, takeout and outdoor options for food. The restrooms at the chamber are still very popular. We worked on voter registration information, lots of information on relocation that's been going out, and also places to stay. That's kind of a very quick overview of this year, and I apologize again for not having the ability to get this slide presentation, but I certainly would be happy to share that with you, and I'll make sure Josh gets it, and I would be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Warren. Any questions for Warren, Council? Okay, thank you very much, Warren. We appreciate, we know how technical issues, sorry that it didn't work. And yeah, I appreciate you passing it on to Josh, and Josh, go ahead and pass it on to council and myself and staff. Thank you very much, Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Park Commission Certificate of Appreciation from Sara McDaniel. Jeff, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So first of all, you'll probably notice that Sara is not in the audience tonight. She unfortunately had previously scheduled a trip to Alaska. So she's in Alaska. She was going to try and make it, but it was doubtful she could. So anyway, wanted to make sure that we all realize she wishes she could be here. I'm just going to show a few slides here from a presentation that Terry Garrison provided. This was a presentation that was provided for the Parks Commission since her last meeting was just this last March. So hopefully everybody can see the screen. Okay, so as you can see, Sara was on the Parks Commission from February of 2014 until March of 2021. So I spent quite a bit of time on the Parks Commission. Sara was this is from, in fact, almost all these pictures are from Parks Appreciation Day. She was the chair of the Parks Commission from 2015 through 2017. And each year she was a big player in the development of the activities and Parks Appreciation Day itself for the city of Gig Harbor. So that's going to be sorely missed because of her hours and time she spent doing that. It takes a lot of time. I know from my point of view, and there are two council members who worked with Sara on the Parks Commission here. Curious to hear their input too, but from my point of view, I can tell you that Sara always had a smile on her face whenever I'd see her. She had a great positive attitude, and she was a very hard worker. I know she'll be missed. I look forward to working with her in the future, and also to just seeing her around town and get caught up with her. So thank you to Sara.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we have mayor's report. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Dinson.
I just wanted to add that it's hard to imagine the Parks Commission without Sara. She's so passionate, so enthusiastic, and Mr. Langhelm said it correctly, always with a smile, so happy. And I will tell you, Sara is a big walker, and she knows every street, alley, trail in Gig Harbor. If you ever want an education about the city of Gig Harbor, go walking with Sara. I'm like, after 15 years, 16 years living here, I'm like, I never knew this was here. She's shown me so much, and she's will continue to be involved. I know she's on the board of Harbor Wild Watch. I drug her out watering plants with me at 5 in the morning. She's always up for an adventure, and she's just such a wonderful person. So we're very, very thankful to have her service on the Parks Commission.
Thank you. Councilmember Markley.
Thank you. Yes, Robin said a lot of what I was going to say too, but it was a pleasure working with Sara. She was such a great help when I first joined the Parks Commission and showing me the ropes about Parks Appreciation Day and just all of that. She was just such a hard worker, really inspiring and a wonderful volunteer. And I look forward to seeing her around town as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your hard work, Sara, even though you were not able to join us. Okay, so we have the mayor's report is welcoming city proclamation, the proclamation of the mayor of the city of Gig Harbor. Whereas thousands of years before the discovery of the Puget Sound, the Squababish band of the Puyallup tribe inhabited what we now call Gig Harbor. And this city is named the area around Donkey Creek Estuary, Tualacut Estuary, in honor of the tribe's homeland. And whereas by the mid-1800s, immigrants from Croatia, followed by Norwegians, Swedes, Italians, Germans, and other Europeans settled in the area. And whereas the foregoing language does not constitute an intent to identify as a sanctuary city. And whereas all people, including immigrants, are respected and valued and are vital to our shared prosperity. And whereas fostering a welcome environment for all people, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, a place of origin, enhances Gig Harbor's cultural fabric, economic growth, and overall well-being and prosperity for current and future generations. And whereas Gig Harbor has long been recognized as a hospitable and welcoming community where diverse people, families, and institutions thrive, and the contributions of all are celebrated and valued. And whereas Gig Harbor is committed to continuing to build a welcoming and neighborly atmosphere in our community, where all are welcome, accepted, and fully integrated. And whereas community efforts that promote understanding and collaboration between our native-born and foreign-born community members are crucial to encouraging and preserving the Gig Harbor's welcoming environment. And whereas Gig Harbor encourages our businesses, civic groups, schools, government agencies, and other community institutions to undertake their own initiatives beyond this resolution to make Gig Harbor a welcoming place for new residents. Now, therefore, I, Kit Kuhn, Mayor of the City of Gig Harbor, do proclaim that the City of Gig Harbor is a welcoming city that embraces all residents and visitors, regardless of race, creed, and national origin, and strives for unity and harmony in our community. And this is signed by Jenny Wook, Spencer Abersold, Robin Denson, and Tracy Markley as well, and the mayor. Thank you very much. With that, Bob, do you have a city administrator's report?
Mayor, perhaps you'd like to defer to the first agenda bill. There was some discussion about possibly having that presentation. Then I can come back to this. There's also there are comments on stuff that's not on the agenda as well. I could read those as well after that, but I think you'd want to maybe perhaps entertain our consultants at this time.
That sounds great. We'll come back to that after our after our new business item number 1. With that, we'll continue on to a new business item 1, which is our employee engagement professional services contract. The report will be from our labor attorney, Sophia Maybe, as well as our consultants from Nash. I do want to say that I asked Nash Consulting if they would give us the same services, but since it's new and we're building a relationship, would they make it a little bit less expensive? And so your original thing was $48,000, and they were willing to do it for $43,000 for the same amount of services. So thank you very much. We're always trying to save the city a little bit of money. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sophia.
Thank you, Mayor Kuhn. Yes, we want to make sure you have an opportunity to hear from Michael Nash. He's got a limited availability this evening and has to sign off by about 6:25. But presented for your consideration as an item of new business is a contract with Nash Consulting. This contract represents the follow-up from the employee engagement survey that was conducted in the fall of 2020. I had been asked to identify potentially qualified consultants who could come in and begin to immediately assist the city taking steps to improve employee engagement. I identified these folks, and I think they are well positioned to not only begin coming in with certain types of leadership training that they can explain in further detail, but also assist the city in further analysis of the survey results, the recommendations from Insight Link, and identifying additional steps that the city can take to address concerns raised by employees. So the first step is really engaging a consultant, and that is what is essentially presented for your consideration tonight. And I'd like to really just turn it over, Ethan or Michael, whoever wants to speak at this point.
Thank you, Sophia. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet y'all. Michael Nash with Nash Consulting and Ethan Nash with Nash Consulting. I will tell you right now, we don't all have the last name of Nash. Only a couple of us do. We're a team of 12. I'll just say briefly, we've been around for about 25 years, serving organizations in Washington. We work a lot with cities and municipalities and public works. And so, for example, we have contracts with the city of Tacoma, city of Seattle, with Snohomish, with Wenatchee, with PUDs and all those places as well, water districts. So we just kind of by accident, I would say maybe 15, 20 years ago, started gaining a lot of clients in those areas. And so we have a fair amount of experience working with cities and organizations such as yours. I'll also just point out that, in general, our mission is to help organizations be as healthy as possible. And that's a really, broad mandate, of course. The way we go about that is multifaceted, and we actually are proposing several of those different options in working with Gig Harbor. I would say primarily, we're really invested in helping leaders and managers be as skilled as possible. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a corny analogy, but my first career was social work. I went to the University of Washington. I graduated with an undergraduate in social work. And until I ended up getting my master's, I spent a lot of time working with families. And I had a lot of phone calls from parents that went like this: could you please come fix the kids? And we didn't have a lot of seminars for the kids, right? We worked with the parents, and the goal was to help. And I know the analogy can't be taken too far. I'm not referring to employees as kids, and I'm not referring to leaders and managers as adults, but I am saying that getting parents to parent with best practice parenting skills on the same page with one another is key to helping a family be healthy. And the analogy holds true, absolutely, with organizations. Helping managers, leaders, number one, develop and sustain best practice management skills is absolutely the key. And that's the key to, and doing it on the same page with one another, right? That's the key. And what that leads to is a lot of things that we see showing up in the survey. And should I assume that everybody here has seen the survey?
Yes.
Is that a fair assumption? Okay. We did see some good news in there, but we also saw a lot of opportunities in there when it comes to morale, employee engagement, communication, recognition, lots of areas where, bottom line is, when leaders and managers are leading really, really well on the same page, those are the things that become that are dealt with. One of our number one philosophies, which is based on so much research, is that morale really matters, and that's a place where there's obviously some areas of growth opportunity for the city here, and that is going to be impacted primarily by the behaviors of leaders and managers. And there's the top 15 management skills that we incorporate into our work. That includes everything from how we show caring and respect for our employees, it's communication, it's equity, It's involving people in decisions and knowing when and how to do that. It's recognition, it's accountability, which is another area that showed up as a need, I think, here, holding people accountable for the right behaviors. It's culture, lots of really important stuff. So that's a little bit about kind of our philosophy and how we approach things. What I thought we'd do, and I don't want to just drone on. If you have questions, I want to leave some room for that as well. But I want to talk a little bit about what specifically we're proposing, just really, really briefly. And so I'm going to screen share here. And there it is. All right. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So briefly, we are proposing Managing with Mind and Heart is a 5-day workshop that will get all leaders and managers on the same page. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. We want to provide some time for employees as well. That's the second bullet point. I'll say a little bit about that. We partner with leadership up front to build really good buy-in and sponsorship. And part of that conversation also has to do with sustainability. And I'll tell you right now, we are big believers in sustainability. We hate being part of Flavor of the Year, and we work pretty hard to vet our clients, just like they're vetting us, to make sure that we're not going to be spending a lot of time with clients that are going to just do Flavor of the Year, where, you know, we go through this training and then a year later, nobody's even talking about it. We build in a lot of different ways of helping organizations not get stuck in that cycle. That would be part of that work with the leaders. Oh, that was right there under number 4. We also would like to work with, and have been asked to work with, the city to look at the survey and help identify some areas of some recommendations beyond the leadership work that we would be doing. There's possibility of coaching as needed, and then partnering with Gig Harbor to look at the review process. Little deeper dive into this. Starting with the senior leadership team, building some buy-in, building some support and sponsorship, little bit of data collection. We'd be interviewing a small handful of people we don't need to do tons of that because I think your survey really tells the story, but maybe 10 or 11 interviews to get a little bit more detail. The leadership workshops, it's called Managing with Mind and Heart. I'm going to flip down to this. I don't want to make you dizzy here, but I'm going to go down to another page. Our workshop, and I'm going to really briefly mention the 5 days. Day 1 is about the leadership mindset. It's about morale. It's about the power differential. There's emotional IQ involved here, how we receive feedback non-defensively, listening so people feel heard. Definitely some work on one-on-ones and really connecting with employees. Day 2 is much more about understanding the way we show up, the way we impact people as leaders and managers, and arriving at some growth opportunities there. Day 3 is all about performance management, accountability, how to have the difficult conversations, how to maintain the right culture and behaviors in the organization. Day 4 covers lots of concepts around the culture, which includes everything from negativity to decision-making and how to and when to incorporate employees' ideas and opinions into those decisions, recognition, appreciation, fairness, et cetera, et cetera. Day 5 is all about communication, information distribution, which was an opportunity that showed up in your survey as well. And then again, a fair amount of time spent on sustainability, so that the organization is not engaging in that Flavor of the Year process. So yeah, leadership workshops, frontline team building workshops, taking some of the concepts from leadership and bringing those to the employees so that they can mutually support the process, giving and receiving feedback effectively, morale, emotional IQ skills, triangulation and negativity concepts. Again, some work on sustainability, so we avoid Flavor of the Year, individual coaching if needed, working on the review process, and then looking at the survey in general, looking for opportunities there. So that's in a nutshell what we're proposing. Let me stop for a moment and find out if there's questions or comments about any of that. Anything I can fill in the blanks on.
Yes, I think Councilmember Rodenberg, is that your hand up?
Yeah, it is. I couldn't find the raise hand button quick enough.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Nash, in your review of the survey, were you given the 73 pages of comments the employees sent in?
I don't think so. I think Ethan, am I right that I just read like to about page 36, I think.
Yeah, there was an additional 73 pages of comments, and I think those are critically important. And I don't see how you could come up with a blueprint to repair this without having read those. They're critically important.
Okay.
And I think when I look at your study here, to use your analogy, it does seem like you're trying to fix the kids, where I think those 73 pages definitely show that it's the parents that need fixed just as well. So I think your proposal and the way you're approaching it is a little bit off base unless you read those 73 pages. It's critical.
Okay, I appreciate that. And sir, let me ask you, in your analogy of parents, and who are the parents in your analogy?
I would say it was city administration.
Administration. Okay, yeah.
Or the CEO.
Let's just
the critical
point of order. Let's not refer to staff and administration as city as kids and parents.
I was just using his analogy.
I know that doesn't mean we have to use the same.
Yeah, and I apologize. I really don't want the analogy taken other than the systems analogy of how organizations work. But I would also point out, and I agree with you that those comments would be super helpful for us to read. Our work, what we're proposing is a complete looking at all the leadership, administration, anybody who leads, right? And that's from the very top. And so
your proposal leaves out, it shows that coaching of the CEO, I'm not sure who that refers to, is an additional cost. And that is also critical to the blueprint you should be putting together. Just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, as needed, we were certainly willing to do coaching. But again, the work that we would like to do with leadership is really all levels of leadership, because that's our belief absolutely is that getting all levels of management and leadership on the same page is critical. And when we look at your survey, there seems to be a huge gap there. And that's what we would be addressing in part as we do the workshops.
And Councilmember Himes.
Yes, going through your report, which by the way I found was very interesting. Thank you. You seem to hit all the key bases. One thing you didn't mention too much was commitment. And I was interested in the commitment portion of this. Having personally been down this road several times in a past life, it seemed to me that it hinged on commitment, particularly when you get down the road a little ways and you get into sustainability and things like that called. And it's time intensive. It could be budget intensive. It could be a lot of things intensive. It's another thing to do. I guess I'd be interested in your perspectives on that.
I actually appreciate that, Mr. Himes. When we, again, I use that term vetting clients, right? What you're talking about is what we're looking for. I would say in the first 5 or 6 years of my 25-year career in this field, I wouldn't spend too much time up front digging into commitment or sponsorship or commitment to sustainability, and we would just do our thing. And that's why we got a lot more of the flavor of the year. And then a year later, nobody's doing it and nobody's practicing. And we don't want to do that anymore. And so what you're talking about is something that we explore up front. We really are asking for commitment before, during, and after. And we're taking the temperature to see if that's going to be sufficient as we go through the process. And if it's not, if we see that there's gaps, then we're willing to step back and say, okay, let's stop here and look, and let's see what is it going to take for this to actually be a sustainable endeavor. So I appreciate your comments and I agree with you.
Okay. I guess given along that same line then is going forward, we need to have some understanding of what this entails from a commitment standpoint to take the journey. Can we put it that way? There's going to be a lot of, we lost a lot of time and projects and programs because of COVID-19 in 2020. 21, things are sliding again. And it just seems to me that this is not going to come free, particularly probably maybe the time more than the money, okay, as far as staff resources called, hey, what can we devote to this? What are we willing to devote to this? And are we worthy to enter your program? Let me put it that way. Are we ready to go? So I think there's got to be some review of some kind, maybe after the first few sessions, to say, hey, and I'm talking about the executive sessions, the senior leaders, et cetera. Are we committed and are we ready to go on this journey? Okay. Along the flavor, and by the way, along the flavor of the month's comments, from my perspective at least, again, having seen this movie many times before, a failed leadership initiative is worse than none at all.
Amen.
It'll kill you for years going forward. They never forget. And that's why I'm so hung up on this issue called, we need staff to understand, we all need to understand, called what is the commitment here from a time and money standpoint, but particularly time, I think, is the issue.
Let me just address that and say I appreciate those comments. I would absolutely agree. I think flavor of the year leads to cynicism, and pretty soon, you know, the more times you do initiative and they don't really stick, the next time a new one comes through, everyone just holds their breath and waits for it to go away, right? And they're not going to be invested in it. So I absolutely agree with you. I agree with the commitment part of it. Counting the cost ahead of time and making sure that people can give the time. And I will say, and I'm going to say this maybe going out on a limb, at the risk of poking you in where it hurts a little bit, but you know, the survey seems to indicate that you really do need to spend some time on some really important things. You know, and so that doesn't come cheap. And by cheap, I mean time, right? I mean, that really does take time to deal with morale and commitment and, you know, communication and all those things that I think you folks have some opportunities to deal with right now.
Sure. Thank you.
So I think I'll wait a minute for Councilmember Denson, because I know, Mike, you have to leave in a second. And so maybe Ethan can answer Robin's question, but I want to let you finish up before you just have to say you have to sign off.
Okay, I actually have about 5 more minutes, and at this point, I'm open to questions. I think that probably would be the most valuable piece here. So
thank you, Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Nash Consulting for your work so far on this. I appreciate Councilmember Himes' comments about workload, particularly on our staff, because we hear time and time again how overloaded that they are. And typically, as part of our budgeting process at the end of the year, it's not about money. I mean, partially it's about money, but it's also about staff planning their workload for the year. So doing something now in the middle of the year is concerning for me as well. My other concern is that I appreciate your focus on the top and how important good, healthy management is for the entire organization. I absolutely am with you on that. But this weekend I heard, that it sounds like we're going to have a new administration in place after this year. So my question is this the time, or is it better to wait for a new administration so that we can get everybody on the same page, you know, with the administration that we're going to be moving forward with for the next 4 years? If that makes sense, would that be more efficient? So we have time to plan for people's workload, and we have an administration in place that's going to be here for a while.
So one thing, this is unannounced information, actually, even though it was leaked by the Gateway. This is unannounced information.
I thought it was public in the Gateway. I'm sorry.
They withdrew it because they goofed. They promised they wouldn't do this, and they leaked it by a half finished article. So the consultants aren't even aware of this. So I think we should table that conversation. But one thing that might be better, the contract originally said that they would start immediately. And I think we would do a lot better if they were in person instead of doing this all virtual. We would get a lot better with our product. And what you just pointed out might have some merit, Councilmember Denson. So my point is, we changed the contract to say we would start this at a mutually agreed upon date. And, we have to go back to the consultants if they want to start it in January. But my point is, if council wants to pass this tonight, 2 days from now, we can talk more openly about this. And then maybe the council can weigh in on the date. Or they can table this for one council meeting and then to discuss this. But anyway, so if we can be sensitive not to talk about that though tonight, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, Mike and Ethan, you have no idea what kind of.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Mike.
I would, even without going into that specific thing, I would like to three quick things, Mr. Denson. Number one, we actually believe and have seen often that the cultural change that can be produced by the team working, the management working on these things actually can be inherited and passed on. That's actually one of the points of culture change. And so that's just something to consider. Two more quick thoughts. The actual employee part of the commitment, just employees, not managers, is 2 half-days over many, many months. So it's quite a bit less than the commitment of the leadership, which, and I'm not saying the leadership also isn't busy, of course, but for the non-leaders, it's 2 half-days. And then the other thing I'll point out is that on your survey, the amount of ongoing training and development we receive, 5% of the people were satisfied with that. So I think offering training to the employees is a win. So I'll just throw that in there.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to let Ethan finish this conversation, everybody. I'm actually working with another city starting in 2 minutes. So nice to meet everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Sorry for the abrupt ending. See you.
No worries. Councilmember Franich.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, $380 an hour, that's pretty stiff. So I don't have the ability to pull up Ms. McBee's original information that she sent to us, but this $43,000, does this get us to the finish line? Because, or is it, I didn't see it on my computer, but in talking to a fellow council person earlier, that actually on one of those pages, when you get down to the total amount, it said to be determined, TBD. So how far does this $43,000 get us?
So I think I can quickly answer that, Councilmember Franich. The document you may have seen with the TBD was a proposal promotional document. That's the document we just looked at with Michael Nash. The contract itself is the document you would be authorizing, which is it looks just like a regular contract. And it has an exhibit that identifies specifically the scope of work that's contained in the contract. And that document does not have any TBDs.
I understand that, but
okay,
that's why I'm asking the representative from the company, does this, in your experience in doing these types of services, does this scope of work that you propose for $43,000, does that get an organization to the end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll do my best to answer that question for you. I mean, so the reality is we're coming in to set you all up for the future, right? It's not like at the end of, this engagement, everything is going to be perfect again, right? That's not the idea. The idea is that culture builds itself and develops over time. What we're doing here is providing the tools, right? And the resources there and working on the sustainability so it can get continued throughout time. So does it get you to the finish line at the end of this? No, it's not necessarily, a finishing school in that sense, right?
Well, I understand that unless the things that you're going to be presenting aren't acted upon, that, as Councilmember Himes pointed out, it's just, it's not going to get anywhere in the end. But what my question is I saw that you had CEO training is not included in this, but I'm assuming you've done these. I saw that you've done these with many municipalities. Does this usually, if the people are willing to accept the training, so to speak, that you give them, does this usually get to the end?
Right. Well, we've sure seen it go that way, right? We've seen it work. And the reality is, we provided a whole bunch of references all the way from, again, the city of Seattle, city of Tacoma, that can speak to the results they see over time. And the results they see over time is that they do the engagement surveys, a year from now, and it improves, right? And then they continue to work on this stuff. What we're trying to do here is, again, I'm sorry to repeat myself, is providing the tools to be carried out over time.
Right. Well, I could see, Seattle Public Utilities, Tacoma Public Utilities, those were some organizations that they were a mess. And the organization, those places were totally out of control. Have you done any follow-up with those organizations?
Okay, so he's frozen right now. I didn't know if his speaker was frozen. Ethan, are you frozen?
So since we have a question that's not being answered, I'm happy to share. I did reach out to several of the references that the company provided, including like Tacoma Public Utility, and the feedback was very positive about the cultural change that they've been able to achieve. I'm sure Ethan could do a better job giving you more specifics, but I did have favorable references provided.
Right.
Thank you.
And there is a thought, as Councilmember Denson, none of this was supposed to come out. I was going to tell all of you, not the way it was. It was completely, they gave me their word, the gateway, and they blew it. And so Wednesday, Thursday, then we can talk about it more, and council can pass this tonight or table or do whatever they want. Councilmember Alversole, but I apologize, council.
That's right. I guess my question was, welcome back, Ethan.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I guess my question is was the culture changed at these places that you described through the actual benefit of the process that the Nash Consulting provided, or was it just the change of elected officials?
Well, we've done the same thing with people that, groups that don't have elected officials. So, we've seen it work in that sense. And then, we've worked with organizations throughout, the administration. So if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Councilmember Franich. Up, you're on. You got to hit that button.
I don't want to step on Councilmember Wook. She hasn't had a chance to speak yet, so I'm more than happy to speak after her.
Thank you. Councilmember Wook.
Yes, I was just wondering about the process because I do have a motion to make. I wasn't sure if we were in clarifying questions or if we were in council deliberation.
We're still in clarifying because we're going to take public comment.
Thank you. I will make a motion at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Back to you, Jim.
If we're under clarifying questions, yeah, I just have some general comments to follow up on what Councilmember Denson had to say. So I will reserve those comments for then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Markley.
Yes, thank you. So on the Exhibit A for the scope of work, I just had a couple questions on what people groups are. So like it's the 4th one down, the half-day senior leadership workshop. Who is included in the senior leadership workshop? Who do you consider at our establishment being senior leadership? And then a couple more down, who are considered frontline employees and who would be included in that? And then executive leadership under that. Just trying to figure out which staff or employee or elected groups would be in each of those categories and in each of those training sessions.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Let me address the first one, which I believe you were asking about, kind of that senior leadership development day, or half day rather. Well, so I'll say, part of this we put together without knowing your exact terminology or what you may use. But essentially, this is part of this. We'll need your help figuring out who these folks are, right? And that's going to be people, that the very top level and their direct reports, essentially, would we consider, the senior leadership, right? What you might consider executive team. So again, I'm not exactly sure who that might be, and we'll work with you to figure out who's appropriate for that. And then regarding the frontline employee workshops, basically we just consider frontline employees in this sense, anybody that doesn't necessarily manage or supervise anybody, right? Some people that don't have any direct reports. And then of course, for the leadership, the management workshops, that's anybody and everybody that has direct reports, including senior leadership, whoever that may be, including the director level, managers, and supervisors. So the idea is we're actually mixing all these categories together, right? As Mike said, the idea is getting everybody on the same page together. That's why we don't break them out in distinct groups. We want that full kind of 360 level of accountability going on, right? If I sat next, I'm a supervisor and I sat next to a director level and we went through this together, well, I now know what's expected of the director and they know what's expected of me, and there's no ambiguity in there. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, City Administrator Bob Larson.
Mayor and Council, I could perhaps elaborate a little bit more if there's interest in knowing what those groups were consisting of. I didn't know if you wanted me to go into a lot of detail, but I believe Ethan covered it really well. But the leadership team are the directors, the program managers, the city administrator, of which I believe there are 10 or 11 there in that group. Then the 5-day managing with mind and heart was a one group of 25. So I'd include the original senior team as well as any supervisors or managers we have. It'd be sergeants, it would be our city engineer, it would be our wastewater treatment plant operator, our maintenance manager, folks of that category. The middle managers, I'd call them, and then the supervisors as well, which we have, I think, a total of 25, which includes the executive leadership team in that group. And of course, the employee groups it's about roughly 90 people, and we split them up into 3 groups, what I'll call the employees that would have that other training for the frontline employee workshop.
Thank you. Ethan, you had told me that these workbooks are like 100 pages long. How do you get staff to get through a 100-page workbook?
So that's a good question. I've got that question many times before. So yes, they're about 100 pages long. Mostly because it's not only it's a workbook that they'll use throughout the 5 days, right? To fill things out, brainstorming ideas, commitments they're making, but it's also a resource guide, right? So it's not just every page they're needing to do something on. It provides tools and resources for all the things that we'll discuss in the class, so then go back and reference that, right? Everything from kind of the behavioral style work we do to be able to, review kind of what the different styles are, to everything about kind of the decision-making process and the different styles you can use and when to use them. So resource guide as well as a workbook that they use throughout the 5-day workshops. Now for the employee workshops, they will have, a very Reader's Digest version of that, if you will. So they will have, I think it's about 30 pages or something of that, like that.
Right. Now, to check up, a survey or even training, which is ongoing with different council and administration, elected officials coming and going, you probably tend to do a follow-up in a couple years. Do you refer back to the same workbook, and do you do follow-ups typically when you go into a municipality?
We do. We end up doing a lot of follow-ups. So yes, a lot of the work that we would do, subsequently would be, now that people have gone out into, the quote unquote field, if you will, and practice these skills and trial and error, right? They're able to come back now when we work with them and say, hey, so what's going well with this? What's going well with in one-on-one meetings with employees? What's going well with the running meetings, and what's not going so well? And so this is a chance for us to troubleshoot in real time. So a lot of the follow-up is that. And then of course we do have follow-up content as well, where we kind of expand on a lot of what we discussed in the 5 days and in the employee workshops, and then some new topics as well. So to answer your question, yeah, a lot of the follow-up work is referring to this stuff. This is, we consider kind of the baseline for everything else we do, right? We lay the groundwork first with best practice skills and behaviors, and then as you see fit, we build on that.
Right. So just so we know what we're getting into, I know it varies, but when you have your follow-up, what are you looking at for price? Just, I know they vary, but are we looking at a follow-up? Are we looking at 2/3 of the same thing again, or the same amount of money, or just something so we know what we're getting into?
Sure. Appreciate the question. And of course, follow-up is, it's really going to be, like you said, customizable and what you all can do. Typically what I've seen is a follow-up is 2 or 3 more days with everybody within leadership. Again, supervisors, managers and up. Usually 2 days with there. And then we often do, another follow-up half day with employees as well. So yeah, 3 days, times our daily rate. And then of course, a lot of the follow-up that we do is often coaching, right? Doing more one-on-one.
Yep, thank you. Before we open up public comment, Sophia, do you have anything else or Ethan too, before we open up public comment? We have, Ethan, we let the public comment on each of our council bills. We never know what we're gonna get, but we are very open this way. So I already know what the first caller that's had his hand raised for a long time will be. But any other follow-up, Sophia or Ethan, before we go on to public comment?
No, thank you.
Yeah, nothing more from me. I hope that covers most of your questions. So no, I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to be opening up for public comment. And please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes, and please stick to the subject at hand. Caller 874, you've got the floor.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Kuhn, members of the ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. His name's Tom Swick. I'm over here on Hunt Street. You guys know me well, of course. I would agree with Miss Denson. She talked a little bit about a best approach of waiting for, and that was a news flash to me that the current administration will not be here next year. I know that was leaked and wasn't supposed to be out, but anyway, but based on that, I do not believe I think it would be a waste of money for you guys to drop $40,000 on that until you have a new administration in place. Common sense just dictates that. And the other issue is I have a concern that I don't think a consultant is going to help the city with the current issues. And the current issues really come down to 3 things, and that's integrity, honesty, and transparency. And that's all the city needs to operate and to function well, to serve the public's interests, and to get along well with each other. And Gig Harbor does not have the transparency. That I can comment on firsthand. I sent photographs of Gig Harbor sewage washing up onto Jerish Dock and nothing. And I sent photographs of Donkey Creek being blown out with mud from a moderate to heavy rainfall. None of that stuff ever makes it in the news. There's not a single stitch. It never makes it there. And I think, and I've said this before, is what people will do in darkness, they will not do in the light of day. And I think even if it was just the transparency part that was really hammered home and everybody was held to the fire, I think all of the issues that you guys face as a government, and they're issues that are not just, as you know, they don't impact just Gig Harbor residents. It's obviously it impacts surrounding residents, would correct themselves. And so when I see you guys going to a consultant to try to learn how to correct these issues, it frustrates me because it really does come down to those three things. You know, if everybody just acts, you know, whenever they're doing something, whenever they're taking actions, it's just as long as it's honest and there's integrity behind it and it's transparent, everything will correct itself. And so I just don't think you can actually force or teach honesty and integrity to adults. I don't think it's something that can be taught. To a child, yes. To somebody in their adolescent years, yes. You guys are talking about adults. So my summary of this comment is the transparency issue. And you guys demonstrated the fact that that's a problem, because even the mayor said, I did not want anybody to know. I didn't want the citizens to know that I wasn't going to be here next year, or Mr. Larson. And the citizens have a right to know that.
So first
Why
thing,
wouldn't you want them to know that?
you're past your 3 minutes and I have a right on a private note to do what I want. Thank you for that very much, Mr. Wick. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? I've got the list right here for the public. Anyone else? I think you push *9 or *6. Okay. With that, I will close the public comment and we will have council deliberation and action. Councilmember Wu.
Thank you. I'm sure that Nash Consultants is very qualified, and I thank them for their proposal. Over 90% of our city employees filled out and completed the employee survey. That is a huge percentage, and very clearly they wanted their voice to be heard. Their voice is important and deserves to be heard and taken seriously. The Nash scope of work is not driven by the complete employee survey responses. At the same time, there are parts of the scope, such as the employee review policy, that is vital to our city and employees. Over the weekend, there was some information that impacts the survey in a very major way. At one point, our city administrator had suggested a committee consisting of directors, supervisors, employees, and council for discussion and to perhaps formulate a plan. So tonight I move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as the leader, include directors, supervisors, some employees, and council members Abasol, Markley, and Rodenberg, with the purpose of how to proceed with the consultant training program and report back to the full council no later than May the 24th.
Okay, is there a second? Well, first thing, we don't even actually, Carrie, don't we have to have the motion that's on the agenda first and then amendment to that? Or can a councilman just make a new motion outside of the council bill first? Just a sec, you're on mute.
Am I still on mute?
No, you're not.
Okay, a council member may make a different
But you're going to have to
motion.
speak louder.
Okay, a council member may make a different motion. It does require a second.
Okay, I think you said the council member may direct a motion if it gets a second, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. there's a discussion. My first thing I'll have to say is I have a little problem with 3 council members directing this when the original survey was done, 3 council members picked themselves to be on this committee, and they generated a lot of the questions themselves. A lot of those questions were directed at an elected official, myself. I asked the council if they would put some questions on there for them. They're elected officials too. And they said they would. There wasn't one question on the survey about council. So you chose one elected official to put a lot of questions on the survey. A lot of questions were directed at one elected official, not 7 others, just one. So you hand chose yourself to make that when you already committed to put questions on council as well. You've put a lot of pressure on staff. You've directed a heavy workload. A lot of the survey questions came back saying that they're stressed, that they have too much to do. I told you last July that you needed to take some projects off. It was too much for staff. You chose not to do it. We asked you to, you chose not to. So I have a big problem. After I leave, do whatever you want, but I have a big problem with you now directing not only the survey you did, but now directing consulting when you're on there and you're not going to be part of the ones that are being reviewed. You're going to review me and others, but you're not going to let anyone review yourself. And and if you look at the AWC handbook, it says that if you have a strong mayor form of government and you meddle, a council meddles, and this isn't all of you, but it is several of you, you meddle in the day-to-day operations of a city, which is what you've done with staff, that it will cause havoc for a city. That's what the AWC handbook says. And you're thick in it. You're so thick in it, and you're wanting to do it even more. So, Councilmember, that's all I have to say. Councilmember Franich and Councilmember Rodenberg, I'd like you to figure out how to raise your hand, but the other way if you can. Councilmember, if you can't, I'll do it. Okay, that's fine. Councilmember Franich, and then you're after.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In light of Councilmember Denson coming forward with that information, I think that there is no need to move forward with this at this point in time. I've said all along, this was a politically motivated situation for the most part. The survey, it was an attack on the mayor and the city administrator and the human resources director. Now that the news is out about the mayor, I think that the leaders of this whole notion now, maybe that they can calm down a little bit, but there is absolutely no reason to move forward with this in light of the fact that there will be at least a new mayor, and the city administrator, that's up to the mayor, the new mayor. So I don't know where that's going to be, but moving forward with spending this money with an administration that we know for sure that the mayor is not going to be in charge next year, and we don't know the fate of Mr. Larson. This should be postponed till next year, as I believe Councilmember Denson was alluding to. So I think that is the wisest course of action for our taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yes, I think as a point of clarification, this is a good time for Ms. Maybe to clarify that we did not make up those questions. Those came from the consultant, nor were we able to put any questions on there about council people. Can you clarify that, Ms. Maybe?
So I suppose I can clarify that the questions were provided by Insight Link, that a committee reviewed them, and that Insight Link received some feedback from that committee. The questions were not created from scratch by the committee. I think that's what you're attempting to explain. These were provided by the survey company, essentially.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say I have emails, Councilmember Rodenberg, that the union was emailing your personal email. There's correspondence with the union emailing your personal email during this whole time. And I have copies of that. So that's another reason why I have problems with coaching to the union and to staff from council. Councilmember Franich.
Yes, Ms. McBee, could you clarify whether or not those questions that were reviewed by that ad hoc committee, did they make any changes to those questions or provide any input to Insight as to the makeup of those questions?
That was part of the purpose of the committee, yes.
Okay, so there were some changes or suggestions made.
Correct.
Okay, very good. And I don't know, since there's a motion on the floor in a second, I don't know if I can make a motion to amend the motion that is on the floor at this point in time.
No, we have to wait. You correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but we have to wait until the motion has been approved or passed or not. Is that correct, Carrie?
Well,
Actually, a motion to amend can be entertained again as long as it has a second, and then it has to be voted on ahead of the main motion.
Okay.
Then
we're going to have to, I'm probably going to have another way you can speak. I heard that we have to finish the motion. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, I can't hear you, Carrie.
Councilmember or Mayor Kuhn?
Yeah.
Mayor Kuhn?
Yes.
What she said was that you can make amendments to this motion.
Okay.
At this time.
Then I would like to amend the motion made by Councilmember Wook to appoint council members Himes, myself, and Councilmember Abersol to that committee that she is talking about. The people that she has suggested are the people that had plenty of chances at this whole exercise that we've been going through. They've had plenty of input. There's been no input from the other side.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Himes.
Yes, I was going to second, but I'll withdraw since it's been second.
Thank you. Councilmember Abersol.
Well, my question, I guess, was if Councilmember Wook could restate her amendment, just so I was clear on exactly what I was voting for.
Okay.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So may I restate that?
Sure. I mean, maybe since those other three got a chance, you would be supportive of three other council members that Councilmember Franich is involved.
So thank you. And let's remember that what I am proposing this evening is indeed a committee making up of the city administrator and some of our directors and supervisors and three council members. So I will be happy to state that again. And my suggestion is that we have this committee before, instead of voting on the Nash amendment tonight or the Nash motion tonight, let's figure out what this information that we learned over the weekend means to the training program. So my original motion, which I will make again, I move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as leader, include directors, supervisors, some employees, and council members Abersol, Markley, and Rodenberg, with the purpose of how to proceed with a consultant training program and report back to the full council no later than May the 24th. So you will, and that was my motion, you will notice that of the 3 members I moved, 2 of them were not on the original ad hoc committee.
Wasn't Councilmember Rodenberg on the original ad hoc?
So I'm putting forth 3 members tonight, and 2 of them were not on the original ad hoc committee. Only 1 was on the original ad hoc committee, and that was Councilmember Rodenberg. The other 2 were not.
Councilmember Markley was on that committee afterwards.
She never attended a meeting. She recused herself, and Councilmember Denson sat on that committee.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got 2 motions. Carrie, do we vote on the second one first and then go back to the original, correct?
Yes, vote on the amendment first.
Okay. Yes, we'll vote on the second one first. Councilmember Markley.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to clarify that, yes, I was originally going to be on that committee, and then I had some other issues come up and had to recuse myself. So I think maybe 1 meeting, but it was like an introductory meeting. There was nothing else after that. However, I've been thinking about this as we've been talking, given the sensitivity of the situation, given the fact that it's already announced that I am a candidate for mayor coming up, I will not accept the nomination to this committee. I would rather that be another council member that council chooses. I just feel like it might be a conflict of interest moving forward. And so I would rather there be another council person appointed. I appreciate the nomination very much. I do want to see this go forward and not get sidelined, or, I really do want to make sure that this training can happen and that it can go forward at the right time. So I very much, this is it's hard because I want to make sure that that happens, but I really do feel this would be a conflict of interest for me to be on this committee. So thank you, Councilmember Wook, very much for nominating me. I greatly appreciate it. But just from what has happened this evening, I just feel like this was too sensitive of a thing for me to be involved in. So I would like to have someone else nominated. Thank you.
I applaud you for that. I think running, and now knowing that everyone knows that you're running for mayor, I think that's a wise decision for the conflict. Councilmember Wook, would you like to put another name in there and amend?
So I'd be happy to see if Councilmember Denson would be happy to sit on this committee and allow her name to be put forward. Councilmember Denson.
Okay, all right. You
don't want me to respond to that now?
Well,
will you allow your name to be put forward?
I will, but I was part of the committee with Councilmember Rodenberg and Wook. So if somebody wants to make an amendment, they're welcome to do it. But yes, I would be honored to serve.
Thank you. So do I need to make this motion again?
Yeah, you do. And again, I think since this whole survey had four council members for it and three council members against it, and you're picking 2/3 of the same people, I think it's not very wise. I think it's wise to let some of the other ones that were not part of it to be the majority. And I think you should see that. You're just going.
So I did. That was my original motion, right? And at first, Councilmember Markley agreed to sit on this committee. And as she said, this evening has changed her mind. So I will make this motion again.
Why don't you withdraw the motion and then put the new one back?
Oh, okay, so
Mayor,
is that what
point of order? Point of order. This is the city administrator. We already have an amendment on the table.
That's right.
Back to the original motion.
Okay.
at this time.
So
I
then-
would ask for the city clerk or the assistant city clerk to give us some guidance on this. I think Carrie Sands having difficulty with the communication, and if she perhaps could call, but we got to get this clear here.
Mr. Stecker, can you give us some clarification on this?
We're gonna get.
Yeah, I can.
No,
And just
no.
to clarify,
Wait, I'd
Oh,
like
go ahead,
our, let's wait for our attorney, and maybe since Mark Lee was not, then it goes to the motion that is on the table, which would be Councilmember Franich's.
It's an amendment motion.
Mayor, I have the city attorney calling in by landline so she can speak on her phone. I have her on here. She's just trying to figure out how to unmute at the moment. And I think it's either *6 or *9, Carrie, that you need to press in order to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We have you now.
Okay, and is there feedback?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Let's pray for Josh.
Be okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to ask the council to first vote on the amendment that was put forward by Councilmember Franich
Thank you.
before considering any other amendments.
That's what I thought too, before you. Okay, so we have Councilmember Franich's amendment. Would you, since we've had a little time, would you say that again, Councilmember Franich?
Yes, I move to amend the motion that's on the floor to appoint Councilmember Himes, myself, and Councilmember Abersol to this ad hoc committee that's going to be apparently chaired by Mr. Larson.
Right. And there was a second by Councilmember Abersol. We're going to do a roll call. We're going to say all those in favor, say aye. And we're going to start with Councilmember Abersol.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
No.
Councilmember Franich.
Aye.
Councilmember Himes.
Aye.
Councilmember Markley.
Abstain.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
No.
Councilmember Wook.
No.
Okay, and
That leaves you, Mayor.
yep, I vote yes.
So there is no one from the original ad hoc committee.
Right, and that's, yep.
There you go.
Okay, motion passes. Ethan, you've never had this happen before in any city, right?
This is terrific. No.
Yeah, so,
But he knows what the problem is.
right. You'll, I'm sure, stay tuned though, because we will, you've done a lot of work. We appreciate, I'm going to get to Councilmember Markley in a sec, but we appreciate your work. I'm still, if we use services, and I still think that everyone can improve. The leadership can improve, and the people that they're leading can improve. So I think using your services would be good, and appreciate all the work that you and Sophia have put forward. So, yes.
Councilmember, or excuse me, Mayor Kuhn, you still have an original motion on the table that needs to be voted on.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Markley.
Can you
Yes.
restart the motion, please?
Okay, we'll start the motion. We have Wook, would you like to, I'm sorry, Councilmember Wook, would you like to say your motion again too, just as I had Franich, so it's familiar?
I would be happy to. I move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as leader, include directors, supervisors, some employees, and council members Abersol, Markley, and Rodenberg, with the purpose of how to proceed with a consultant training program and report back to full council no later than May the 24th.
Excuse me, you did say Markley, and I think you have to change that. You just read the same, I believe you said Markley, and
I did. So what do we, how do I, somebody asked me to read the original motion. That is the original motion.
Right. And so we had an amendment.
Let's read it as it's been amended. Let's vote on the motion as it was amended. So if you would read your original motion, but change the names to Councilmember Bob Himes, Councilmember Jim Franich, and Councilmember Spencer Abersold. That's the motion that we're voting on now.
I move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as leader, include directors, supervisors, some employees, and council members Himes, Franich, and Abyssal, with the purpose of how to proceed with a consultant training program and report back to full council no later than May the 24th.
Thank you.
There's a second of Councilmember Abersold. I'm going to do a roll call again.
Can I
All
ask
those
a
in-
clarifying question really quick?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask, and I didn't know when the appropriate time was, is if this committee is going to be formed and managed by the city administrator, I was going to suggest allowing the city administrator to choose the 3 council people that he would like on the committee if he's going to be running it and managing it. But I didn't know how to form that into an amendment or a proposal, or it's an idea I wanted to throw out there, just because if he's the one that's going to be taking the charge on this, then why would he not be able to pick from our 7 council people who he would like to be sitting on this committee? So that was just, I don't know how to form that into an amendment or a motion, or if that can't even happen now that we've already voted.
Well, let's
But you can have an amendment, I think.
ask him what his thoughts are. Bob?
So, good evening. Can you hear me? This is your interim city attorney, Carrie Sand.
Hi.
Hi. So the council was getting ready to vote on the main motion after having passed an amendment. If the council wants to suspend voting on the main motion and entertain an amendment to, instead of putting forward council members Hines, Franich, and Abersold to be on this committee, but leave that in the discretion of the city administrator choosing who the 3 council members are on the committee, the council could entertain that motion to amend, provided there is a second, and then must vote on that ahead of the main motion, just as before.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Yeah, you can stay on the phone, Carrie. State your point.
Mayor, this is the second time that this has come up. I don't believe unless I withdraw my amendment to the motion that this is even possible.
It's another amendment, and so procedurally it is possible, again, provided it gets a second.
So I would move to make an amendment, to propose an amendment, unless Councilmember Markley would like to propose an amendment.
Well, I'm one thought, because I'm not sure Bob wants to be put on the spot like that. I think before
Well,
you
I
do
wanted
that,
his thoughts.
Yeah,
I would
let's
like
hear his
to have
thoughts
some
first.
discussion on this. It's before yeah.
I agree. Before we vote, we should at least ask the person that's having to do this. Bob.
I'm sorry, I'm trying. Mayor and council, if council votes that way, I will do my duty. I don't want to say it any other way, but I will be happy to select 3 council members. And frankly, what I would propose doing, rather than appearing to be arbitrary, I would most likely just do a random selection of the 7. I think frankly, that'd be about the fairest way I could see doing it at this point from my position.
Well, okay.
That's no good, Bob. That's not right. The direction of you should be taking direction from the council, not from drawing names out of a hat.
Council, I respectfully disagree, Councilor France. My direction normally comes from the mayor. But if the council votes a particular way and they direct the mayor to do that, and he would delegate that to me, or if it's delegated to me, then I would take that on responsibly and I'll follow through accordingly.
So then I'm happy to make an amendment unless Councilmember Markley, you would like to make an amendment.
Just that Councilmember Abersold.
Why can't we just make an amendment where Councilmember Hines, Franich, Wook, Roddenberry, and myself are on this committee. Councilmember Denson and Markley, I believe, have said they don't want to do this. So let's just make an amendment. There's 5 of us and end this.
Mayor, members of the council, this is City Administrator Larson. I believe you would want to have less than a majority of council sitting in any particular committee. You could have to have 3 or less. You can't have 4 or more, otherwise it constitutes a quorum of the council.
The reason I brought this up is because we have 4 against 3. It's been 4 against 3 this whole time. And so now we're wanting to switch the committee from the people that were for the survey from the very beginning, and then take all of them off and replace it with the 3 individuals that were against the survey from the beginning. And so the only way I thought to possibly make this fair is, number 1, for me to abstain from this, and number 2, for the person that's going to lead the committee to be able to choose the council members, whatever method he feels is fair to move forward. That was what I was thinking of. If council is not supportive and we need to vote on the other amendment, fine. I just wanted to throw that in there as a possibility.
Okay, like the discussion to keep going a little bit before we just make quick decisions, because there is more comments. And then council member, let's see, who went last of speaking, Wook or Franich, as far as commenting? I can't remember.
Mayor, this is City Administrator. With all due respect, if the consultant Ethan Nash is not needed any further here, I would suggest we could release him from the meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Ethan. Unless you want to stay on, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and we will be in touch, I'm sure. I did ask Sophia to contact different cities, and she had, as she pointed out, she had great response from the cities and the municipalities and that she reached out to. So you come highly recommended. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for your time. Glad I could be here, and good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Himes.
Yes.
I think we're in order here.
No, the point is.
Point of order, you're not choosing people as they signed up.
I'm
Councilmember Himes just signed up.
I can
Robert's rule
wait.
of order says if several council members have spoken several times when someone else has not, you need to give other people an opportunity. You have spoken at least twice, both you and Franich, since Councilmember Himes has had a chance. Councilmember Himes.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about this whole discussion is we are arguing over legislative people helping make decisions for the administrative side of the shop. I got a real problem with that. That is just out and out stupid is what it is. We're in their knickers and we shouldn't be. I agree that, in fact, I was going to make a motion, I probably will make a motion, that given the outline of the steps that Nash put forward tonight, and they're on Exhibit A, and I think you referenced that. I know Councilmember Markley did. And basically have them go through the first 4 steps and then let the affected people, the leaders, the mayor, the city administrator, make a decision. Do we go forward or don't we go forward with this thing? And how do we go forward? And by the way, we haven't addressed the big policy issues at all. I mean, you're all blind to this issue of, oh yeah, we're ahead on all the projects. Everything's working great. It's going to take time, people. I was the only one that mentioned that. That's crazy. We'll all say, oh yeah, go do it. Here, by the way, if you want to honk off the troops, just pile more stuff on them to do in addition to what they've already got to do and say, yeah, it's a firm deadline. You got to get it done. So I will vote no big time on this main motion. I don't care who's on it. It's wrong. It is, by the way, it is according to the original AWC guidelines that we received, it's absolutely dead wrong. We are now meddling in the administrative side of the shop on something that they're going to do. This makes no sense at all. We're way out of whack. Way out of whack. So I'll leave it right at that.
So, and I might add, you wonder why we might have a few troubles finding city employees when you've got council meddling in the staff on a daily basis. That's what AW says why it's not so good. Councilmember Wook.
Thank you. I move to make an amendment, and I move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as the leader, include directors, supervisors, some employees, and 3 council members chosen by the city administrator with the purpose of how to proceed with consultant training program and report back to the full council no later than May 24th.
A second.
So Carrie, a question. Does this, if this passes, does it override the other motion?
So this is the limit of the amount of amendments that can be made. So this is actually called a secondary amendment to the primary amendment to the main motion. It can be voted on separately. And if it is adopted, the council could nevertheless still consider the primary motion, which I believe appointed Hines, Franich, Abersold. If I'm keeping track, maybe the clerk can help me out here and confirm.
Yeah.
Okay. So the outcome of the successive voting on the secondary and then the primary amendment will then obviously inform the main motion. So I hope that is clear and that we're all keeping track. But what I heard Councilmember Wook just propose as a secondary amendment is to allow the city administrator to decide the 3 council members to appoint to this committee.
Okay, so, but then,
And then
both of them would pass. Let's just say this passes, and then the other one's passed. Then you can't. They're not made up of the same people necessarily.
Well, you're right. We'd have a conflict that would need to ultimately be resolved. I just don't know if we're going to end up in that situation. We won't know until the votes are cast.
Can I please make a suggestion? That
yes, please do.
Councilmember Wook, could you please amend your motion to be
the primary motion or primary amendment?
Just make it amendment to the primary motion that instead of those 3 council members being appointed, it would just be up to the city administrator to appoint them. So then you will vote on that amendment. If it does not pass, then it goes back to the primary motion where the 3 council members are identified. But if your amendment passes, then you'll go back to the main motion, but instead of naming 3 council members, it will be up to the city administrator to appoint.
Second.
Well, wait, but I'm not sure, Carrie, that's changing what we already voted on.
That's right.
We haven't voted on the main amendment, on the main motion.
I'm not sure if that, Carrie, that's changing what we already voted on.
What I heard the clerk suggesting would work insofar as it appears that Council Member Wook was the maker of the secondary amendment as well as the primary amendment. And so if she wants to withdraw the secondary amendment and instead basically amend her primary amendment, then we only have 2 things to vote on. The primary amendment, as restated, allowing the city administrator to select the 3 council members, and then the main underlying motion. Are you
I
willing to do
already
that,
amended
Councilmember
the
Wook?
main motion that she made.
Yeah, Councilmember Franich amended her main motion, so.
And that passed. The amended main motion passed. She can't change her main motion now.
The main motion has not passed.
Right.
But my amendment was on the main motion.
The only thing that is passed is your amendment.
Well, one thing, she's changed, I have to point of order. Her original motion was amended. We passed the amended motion, and then she changed her original main motion, which is a different motion.
And we have not voted on it.
I know, but it's not your original motion.
So I did make another motion. So I do have a motion. I do have an original motion that I believe I can withdraw my amendment. Is that what you're suggesting? And then go back to the original motion that I made and put in the city administrator. Is that correct? Is that what folks are advising? Anyway, I'll be happy to withdraw my amendment and make a, and,
Well, let's
change
wait.
the main motion.
Let's wait. Point of order. I'd
I
like
do
to
want
hear
to
from our attorney.
I do want to confer with the clerk and make sure that I'm tracking where we are at with all these various amendments. So Clerk Tousley, would you be able to confirm that Councilmember Wook had made a motion to amend and is now seeking to withdraw that? Is that correct?
He made a main motion originally.
I just
Correct.
now made an amendment, so I can withdraw this amendment. Is that what you're suggesting?
An amendment to the main motion was made and approved, which makes what's on the table right now to be voted upon, other than the amendment, was a main motion, but with 3 different persons identified. So that's what's on the table to be voted on. And then I understood Councilmember Wook wanting to amend that motion, the one that's already been decided that that's what they were voting on with the 3 new council members, but she wanted to amend that further.
Correct.
And so
Point
that's
of order.
it's on the table to change the language from the 3 identified to allowing the city administrator to choose.
State your point.
That's what we should be voting on.
She amended this would be a 4th amendment. And according to our attorney, that is not allowed.
It would be the 2nd amendment.
No,
That's
it would
correct.
not.
It was your amendment and now she's amending it.
She made a motion after I amended the motion to she made a motion to amend my motion that passed. And that's what's on the floor. Now and we need to vote on that. I call for the question on the original.
Point of order.
He can call for the question. If he's called for the question, is there a second?
Yeah, I believe this is the 3rd or 4th. And so
We have a motion
there's a
and
second. Councilmember Abersold, second. Call the question. I'm not sure what we're voting on. I'm sorry.
We're voting on whether Bob can pick the council members.
No.
Actually, let's let the clerk clarify
No.
what you're voting on.
You already
It needs
voted
to be
on
clear.
I believe that I think Councilmember Wook withdrew her motion, which it felt like it was an improper motion because she completely restated the original motion, but with different language. She had a second, but then after discussion, she was going to withdraw that. So I think what we've got on the table right now is the original amended motion naming council member, I'm gonna have to go back and look now.
Hines, Franich, and Abersold.
Thank you, Hines, Franich, and Abersold. I think that's what the question is.
So that was, yeah, I think she's right. So we had, the original motion was her having Abersold, Hines, and Franich.
No, her original motion was not that.
Well, no, but she amended that because.
Yeah, but I didn't get a second.
Yes, you did.
Yes, Lee amended.
Yep.
Lee,
So you have a second. So the motion that we're voting on is to have it run by the city administrator with Councilmember Hines, Franich, and Abersold.
Who was the second on that?
Lee, Councilmember Rodenberg.
So.
For the, no, that's not right.
For the city administrator to choose.
Right, for the city administrator to choose.
Yes.
That that is not what we're voting on.
Right now,
You-
what you have in front of you is the amended motion that was passed. Now, I think you have to go back to the original motion and insert those three names.
I think you do.
Or I'm going to ask the attorney.
There
Could
has been-
excuse me, Mr. Counselor, let me explain this. The amended motion that was passed, can there be another motion to amend that? Because there's only been 2 amendments to the original motion. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking, could a person seek another amendment to that amended motion that was passed?
And what Robert's Rules of Order says is that a motion to amend a main motion is a primary amendment, and a motion to amend a pending amendment is a secondary amendment or an amendment of the second degree. And you can't go beyond that. But I believe where we're at right now is the council did already pass one amendment to the main motion, which was subbing out the names that were originally put forward to serve on this committee. And those were substituted with Hines, Franich, and Abersold. And I believe that's where we were at. And we were getting ready to have the clerk call roll for the vote. And then Councilmember Wook wanted to amend the motion that was being voted on. Is that correct, clerk?
Yes.
This is her third attempt this is her third attempt to change the names. It's not her second attempt to change the names. It's her third attempt.
No, it's not.
And the third attempt is to get it back to the city administrator.
Councilmember Franich, I think a point of clarification, if that is in fact the case, the council member has the right to do that if it's allowed by Robert's Rules of Order. I'm not suggesting she should do it. I'm just trying to point out that that would be an option that they have. I think we need to be clear and fair.
That's why I called for the question on her second iteration of her motions of changing the names.
And if you had a second on the call to call the question, you have to vote on calling the question then.
Right, which is not for you to pick the people. It's for her second go round on trying to change the names.
So, excuse me.
Right now you have a motion and a second to call the question. You need to vote on that first before you can proceed with any more debate.
Okay.
But isn't that one, calling the question and having a second, are we voting on Hines, Franich, and Abersold?
No, you're voting on calling the question, if you're going to continue the debate or not.
Okay, all right, yep. Okay, all those in favor of stopping debate and going for whatever motion is out there, which is debatable, because we're talking about that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Hey.
Nay.
Okay, abstain?
How about
Okay,
roll call?
It's 4-3.
Roll call.
Okay. All those in favor of stopping debate and going to the motion, say aye. Starting with Councilmember Abersold.
Aye.
Councilmember Dinson.
Nay.
Councilmember Franich.
Aye.
Councilmember Hines.
Aye.
Councilmember Markley.
I would really like to know which motion we're voting on after we stop debate. That's still confusing to me. If I want to know which motion we're voting on to know whether I want to stop debate on this or not.
You have the original motion that was amended by Councilmember Franich to insert those three names of Hines, Franich, and Abersold. That was voted on and approved. Now that becomes part of the main motion.
The main motion being what?
No.
The question that's debated.
But
I'm telling you, our legal team and our city clerk, they're not tracking this. Councilmember Wook has tried to change since my amendment passed. Councilmember Wook is on her second. She tried to change the names twice, and now she's.
Let me again repeat what I just said, because it is what you just voted on, which was the amended motion that you presented and was seconded, and it was approved to insert those three names of Abersold, Hines, and Franich into the main motion to be voted upon. That's what you asked for. That's what was approved. And now you're going to vote.
So what are we? So Bob, what do you think the main motion is? Because I feel it's been changed and I'm not
The
sure.
main motion now is originally from Councilmember Wook, and it was seconded, and that was to have the city administrator lead a team of department heads, supervisors, and some employees. And instead of having those three names that she had in the original motion, they get now put in its place the members' names of Franich, Himes, and Aversol. That is now the main motion with the amendment that was approved.
That is not, Bob. That is not. She has made 2 attempts to change the names. That's what was seconded by Councilmember Rodenberg. Not to go to you. We have not voted on her original changing of the names. Before we got to her third attempt to give you the power to pick the council members, Councilmember Rodenberg seconded it to change the names back around.
Councilmember Franich, if I can again explain, the original motion was, if Councilmember Wook wants to restate her original motion, that was the one that was on the table still. It's still on the table.
But I do have to say her original motion had Councilmember Markley, and Councilmember Markley chose not to do it. And then her next motion actually had Councilmember Denson, and instead of Markley. And then her third motion, which we just had, was actually back to the original names. And then now her motion is actually going to you. So she actually had Markley, she actually had Denson. We said that. Councilmember Denson, we voted on that. You had
someone to please restate the original motion that was on the table from Councilmember Wook.
The original motion had Markley.
No, not the councilors, Mayor, just the original motion. Read it in its entirety that was originally stated.
The original motion, I move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as leader, including directors, supervisors, some employees and council members, the original motion, Abasol, Markley, and Rodenberg, with the purpose of how to proceed with a consultant training program and report back to the full council no later than May the 24th.
Right, and then what happened is it was seconded. And then Councilmember Markley said she thought it was a conflict of interest. So that never went anywhere further.
But the amended motion that was approved has inserted those three council members' names of Franich, Himes, and Aversol. That is the amended motion to the original motion. That is what's on the table right now.
No, we voted on that, and the mayor was the tiebreaker.
Right.
I believe that is correct.
We voted on that, Bob.
I understand that. Now that approved amended motion becomes part of the main motion.
Right. And I think at this point then is when Councilmember Wook wanted to amend yet again. And during this whole discussion, I have been reading Robert's Rules of Order, trying to resolve this. And I don't believe we can keep continuing to amend what's before the council, because amendments are out of order when they place before the meeting a question that has already been decided in some way and then is trying to basically be negated by subsequent motion. And so I believe where we're at now is that where things were left off is the amended main motion, which inserted the council member names Hines, Franich, and Abersold, was getting ready to be voted on by roll call vote. And then there was an attempt to amend yet again, which is out of order based on Robert's rules. And so it should be voted on as amended.
Right, and we did vote on that.
We didn't vote on that.
There's been no vote on the main motion with the amendment that was approved. That is on the table right now.
I believe that is what's on the table. It's the main motion as amended.
That is not what's on the table.
Yeah,
that is not what's on the table.
So my question to you is, after we vote on the main motion, is it possible to have another amendment?
Oh,
or is it done?
We're so buried right now. We don't want to do that.
No.
I think it would be at this point inappropriate, because what we're trying to do is decide in some way how this committee is going to be composed to go forward and do the work that the committee is charged with, which, as I understood the motion, is to determine how to proceed with the consultant and report back by not later than May 24th.
Right.
So, Carrie, what is the motion that we would be, and I have to just stand by the attorney, what is the main motion that you feel that we're voting on?
Well, and again, I want to also coordinate with the clerk and make sure that this is her understanding as well, because frankly, it was rather confusing there for a bit. But I believe we are voting on the main motion as amended, which is, of course, appointing a committee, and it explains, who's on the committee, the city administrator, department directors, plus council members Hines, Franich, and Abersold, and they are supposed to determine how to proceed and report back by not later than May 24th.
That is not the motion that is on the table.
The one thing, Carrie, we did vote on that because someone abstained. We had 3 that voted in favor, 3 voted against, 1 abstained, which makes it a tie.
Right, you voted to amend it. Now you have to vote on the underlying main motion. Is that correct, City Clerk?
You voted, the tie vote was on the amendment. The amendment passed, so now the main motion needs to be
as
voted
amended
with those 3 names.
Okay, so we're voting on.
The amendment that Councilmember Wook offered up, Carrie has confirmed that it was out of order, that it was an appropriate amendment. And so therefore it needs to be withdrawn, or it's just off the table.
Right. So we're voting on the main motion with Hines, Franich, and Abersold.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to do a roll call. We're voting on the main motion with Hines, Franich, Abersold. All those in favor, and I'm going to do roll call, say aye. Councilmember Abersold.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
No.
Councilmember Franich.
Aye.
Councilmember Hines.
Aye.
Councilmember Markley.
No.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
No.
Councilmember Wook.
No.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Councilwoman
then
Markley changed her vote from the time before, so motion doesn't pass.
So may I make a new motion now?
Yes.
Yep.
So I now move to direct the mayor to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as a leader, include directors, supervisors, some employees, and council members, 3 council members selected by the city administrator with the purpose of how to proceed with a consultant training program and report back to the full council no later than May the 24th.
I second that.
Okay, roll call. Councilmember.
Discussion.
Sure. Go ahead.
I still think that there was a motion on the table that Councilmember Wook had made to change the names back after my amendment was passed. Councilmember Wook tried to change it 3 times. And with all due respect to Councilmember Markley, there is nothing unfair about the fact that the people, there was a 4-3 vote to even move forward with that engagement survey. And was more than fair now for some of the people that were on the losing end of that vote to have a chance to participate in that, on this committee. And it's that would have been the fairest thing to do.
Okay.
There were 2 members on that I proposed that were not on that committee.
There is not, Councilmember Wook.
Yeah, 2.
Councilmember Markley already said that she attended 1 meeting.
Yep, he did. Councilmember Markley.
Yes, and I'd like to clarify that meeting was an introductory meeting. I had absolutely no bearing on any of the decisions that were made. So Councilmember Wook is correct in what she's saying, that I was not on that committee longer than 1 hour. Okay, that's about the time I served on that committee total. And then Councilmember Denson took over for the rest of that committee. What I am finding to be the most fair in my own personal opinion, is the fact that the mayor handbook does state what the roles and responsibilities of council are. And if we are going dangerously close to messing with that, then if there's a council that is going to be a committee that's going to be formed by the city administrator, then that city administrator, I believe it would be the most fair for him to choose at lottery, random, however he decides to choose, which 3 people would serve, rather than the council fighting over this on who gets to do what. I don't think that Councilmember Himes, Councilmember Franich, or Councilmember Abersold would do a poor job or steer things in the wrong direction. That's not why I voted no on that original amendment or amended motion. I'm just trying to think of a way that would be the most fair moving forward. And so that is the only reason I did not mean to throw this whole meeting into confusion. The only reason why I made that suggestion was to see if there would be consensus on having the city administrator pick if he's going to be leading this committee. So that was why I brought that up. It was not personal against any other council people whatsoever. I was just trying to suggest something that would be fair. I did not make that motion. Councilmember Wook made the motion, I think on my behalf, because I didn't make the motion. But I don't think it's fair to say that she's tried to change names multiple times. That was my suggestion of having the city administrator be the one to pick the names. And then she chose to make that motion after I suggested it. That was not on her own suggestion. That was on my suggestion. So I'm just trying to clear up, I'm not trying to create discord and confusion. I'm trying to create something fair and consensual that we can all agree on. And if that's not possible, then it's not possible. But that was my intent in bringing that up. It wasn't to make it personal against anyone. It was to try to make it fair by having another person, whether it's random or not, the leader of this committee choose who he wants on that committee. It's not personal against anybody. So I wanted to just explain myself and clarify that after all of this confusion that I apparently caused, and I apologize for that. That was not my intention at all.
Councilmember Himes.
Yes. Do we have a motion on the floor, I believe?
Yeah, we do.
Do we have a second?
Yes, we do.
Good. I would like to move to amend that motion to eliminate all council members from that committee. This committee, by the way, the city administrator, the directors, the managers, the supervisors, they are the people that are directly affected. They are the people that have to make the commitment. We have no business sticking our nose in that and recommending to sign them up to do things, because we're not even involved. We're not employees of the city. Who are we kidding? Therefore, I think it makes eminent sense to have no council members on that committee. I agree. Bob Larson should be the chairperson of that committee. I agree that there ought to be directors, there ought to be managers, there ought to be supervisors on it. But I do not agree that we should turn a leadership development program into a political battle. And that's where it's going right now. And by the way, the Gateway will love this. Their sales will go up for once. So therefore, I'm going to amend the motion to eliminate all council members from this committee.
Second.
Okay. I would support
Discussion.
I would just say, no, I would support that, because you're kind of using the employees as pawns. That's what you're doing. You're using employees as pawns. I also might like to add, we have council members up for re-election. So I find it very wrong that council members sit on a committee trying to decide what's good for staff when they're actually going to be voted maybe on it. I think that's very much a conflict. So we got 3-4 people up for reelection, and you're going to sit on a panel that's going to decide what's good for the employees. I think that's, and you're using them as pawns. And I support what Councilmember Himes said, and that means me staying away from it completely as well. Councilmember Franich.
Well, I don't know if I completely agree with that, whether or not I second the motion. And given this point in time where we're at is why I seconded it. But it sure would have been nice if now everybody were trying to look for the fairest way to do this, when this was a political nightmare from the very beginning, when we talked about this engagement survey last fall, for one of these council members to say, rather than stack the deck with the people that for the survey, would have been nice if Councilmember Markley would have at that point in time said, let's let the city administrator pick who's going to be on the ad hoc committee. But that didn't happen. So the people that were for the survey got on the committee. Now that we're to this point now, it would have been nothing would have been more fair than let the other side of the table have a seat at this table. But I support Councilmember Himes because this, and I'm telling you, when we go back and listen to this meeting, Molly, you're going to find out that this thing has been totally screwed up on the way we voted on all these motions.
Okay, Councilmember Benson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also do not think that any of us, regardless of what side we're on in this argument, have the intention of using employees as pawns. And I take offense at that, and I think we all should. I will remind everyone that it took council people stepping in to make the survey happen. And it was a long, hard fight to make it happen. So that's why, even though I appreciate Councilmember Himes' comment, that's why I feel it's important to have council people as almost an outside guardian of what's going on to make sure that the employees feel that their interests are being looked out for by all parties. Again, it took council members fighting hard to make the survey happen. It would not have happened without the intervention of council members fighting hard for it. And I'm afraid that employees will not trust the process if council members are not involved. I really appreciate Councilmember Markley's idea and then Councilmember Wook's amendment suggesting that idea that Mr. Larson choose the council members. I trust his method of choosing however it works out. As long as it's fair, then I feel like the employees will feel like they've got some more impartial outside folks that were elected to take care of this city. And taking care of the city means taking care of our employees to make sure that we've got the staff in place, being able to do their job professionally to take care of our citizens. So I will not be supporting the amendment.
Councilmember Aversold.
Yeah, I just, am I on? Yeah, I feel that as council people, we are elected to watch over these kind of things, but I do feel that it's unfair for Director or City Administrator Bob Larson to have to pick the name. So I won't support the amendment as well.
Okay, Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, I would just remind council, this thing's got to come back to council. You got another bite at the apple here. You don't have to play in the, it's comical. Talk about micromanaging. This is, this is a case study in micromanaging. God, let us get into your business. We'll mess it up for you. Yeah, this is crazy. We have another shot at this thing on May 24th or whenever that council meeting is. So it's not like we've been locked out of the process by any means. I would just again say, hey, I think that we should let the people who are affected make that decision, make that recommendation. And by the way, it's a recommendation. It's not a done deal. It's a recommendation. So I'll just leave it at that. But this is a very interesting discussion. Thank goodness Mr. Nash isn't here anymore.
Okay, Councilmember Wook.
Yes, thank you. I don't think that when we're talking about our employees and their trust and their responsibilities and is comical at all. And I agree with Councilmember Denson that the point here, or a big part of this point here, is to make sure that our employees all of them feel trusted, that they can trust this process, and that they can trust this process, and that they feel very comfortable to speak out loud. So I'm in favor, very much in favor of putting council members on this, and I support, obviously, since I made the motion, I do support and I trust City Administrator Larson.
Okay. All right, so we're voting, we have amendment of Councilmember Himes, I believe. So
Please
we're
repeat
voting
the
on that
amendment.
motion. I'm sorry, Councilmember Rodenberg, did you have something to say?
Please repeat the motion, the amendment.
Yes, Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, the amendment was to eliminate the council members on the committee that will be chaired by Robert Larson per
Thank you.
the original motion.
Mayor, this is City Administrator. So you're actually going to be voting on the amendment only at this time, so everybody's clear.
I'm making an amendment to
Okay.
eliminate council members from your committee.
That's the motion that's on the table, the amended motion.
That's the motion that's on the table.
That's the only one you're voting on. It's just the amendment that is described by Councilor Himes.
Correct. Okay, all those in favor, and I'm going to, whenever I say that tonight, it's going to be a roll call, just so you know. All those in favor say aye. Councilmember Alversole.
Aye.
Councilmember Jensen.
No.
Councilmember Franich.
Aye.
Councilmember Hines.
Aye.
Councilmember Markley.
No.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
No.
Councilmember Woo.
No.
Okay. Motion failed 4-3. So we'll go back to the original motion of deciding to have City Administrator Bob Larson choose the 3 council members. All those in favor, again, roll call, say aye. Councilmember Alversole.
Nay.
Councilmember Jensen.
Aye.
Councilmember Franich.
No.
Councilmember Hines.
No.
Councilmember Markley.
Yay.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yay.
Councilmember Boog.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 4-3.
Mayor, this is City Administrator Larson. Could I please request a recess?
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing. I am very disappointed that the Gateway decided this. We spent 2 hours on this tonight, and this whole thing changed because of a leaked article that was promised that this would not have, that he gave me his word that he would wait until Wednesday and at noon, and it changed the whole outcome of a consulting firm and cost us all 2 hours and changed this whole vote. So I'm just very disappointed that that occurred because of a newspaper deciding not to honor, even if it was a mistake or not.
And I'd just like to apologize because I did not realize, I thought it was.
And I really, and you,
I wouldn't have said something if I had known that even if like, it wasn't supposed to be talked about. I thought it was out in public. So I'm sorry.
I would have given the council the courtesy of letting them know first. So that's why it was pulled away. That's why it was pulled away. It wasn't out there. It was a partially finished article. It wasn't there. So, Councilmember Franich, would you like to say something before I break?
Yes, I would like to ask the attorney a question. If upon review of this, the minutes of this meeting, that it is found that there has been some motions and votes that were taken improperly, what is the impact?
That's an excellent question, Councilmember Franich. And frankly, because the final outcome was decided by a majority of the council, I would think that typically that is enough to confirm the will of the council going forward. And that if the council wants to change the outcome, it would have to be done at a subsequent meeting with a motion to reconsider.
Okay.
Thank you.
Carrie, Daniel owes you a dinner.
Well,
we'll see about that.
More than a dinner.
Dan's the leak.
He owes you at least a dinner. He didn't let you know what you were walking into.
This
all
would
good.
not have, if somebody was following this a little more closely, this would not have happened the way that it happened. When you would go back and you listen to this tape, you're gonna hear it.
Right.
All right. Mayor, ask for the stopping of the recording, please.
Okay, we will take a 10-minute, what do people want? 5 or 10 minutes?
10-minute.
10-minute break. We will resume the Gig Harbor City Council meeting on Monday, March 22nd. We just finished up with new Council Bill number 1, which we put ahead of a few items so that we could let the consultants speak during the presentation. We are going to list it just in a minute. We're going to have the city administrator's report. Councilmember Abersol.
Well, I was going to remind that I don't believe we had any public comments on non-agenda items.
Right. We're going back to where we were. So we're at the city administrator's report. And after that, it goes to public comment. Bob Larson.
Mayor and council members and members of the public, I have got some information about a COVID-19 update. It's about, we have several teleworking employees. We're talking about reopening of the Civic Center eventually, as well as other facilities to the public. We're eventually going to need to talk about having in-person meetings. And I also want to let everybody know there's another vaccination clinic coming up. I'm going to start with that. Police Chief Kelly Busey gave me this information today. Vaccination clinics are scheduled to take place at Chapel Hill from April through June. There will be 4 events, 2 first doses and 2 second doses, and these dates will be released soon. They are not known at this time, but I'm certain and trust that Police Chief Busey will get that information to us as soon as he can and get it out to the community.
Thank you.
And then we've begun the process of discussing and planning for having our teleworking employees return to the Civic Center or other facility. The plan will need to adhere to the state requirements and guidelines. Once we receive this information from the state that would allow us to begin having these employees return, we'll provide that to all of our employees and to council and the community in advance to keep everyone informed. First and foremost, our top priorities are health and safety as we consider how and when to bring all of our operations back at the Civic Center and the other city facilities. Another issue we're dealing with is we want to bring them back as soon as it's safe and it's practical. We'll consider providing options to employees like staggering their shifts, adjusting work schedules, perhaps even hybrid teleworking. And we're going to talk to our employees about these things. We've got several people, several employees in our engineering staff, as well as our community development staff that are currently teleworking. And we want to make certain that we start bringing them back. We're going to have to make some adjustments with them. We want to get their, obviously, give them an opportunity to talk to us about this. We'll need everyone's participation and cooperation for the plan to work. We'll also need to consider issues like employees and their families' health conditions, caregiving responsibilities, childcare, other issues that might affect their schedules. We'll also need to determine if there are issues with the plan so we can make adjustments as necessary or if necessary. Regarding reopening of the Civic Center and other facilities, we'll need to consider when to do this, when to resume having in-person meetings at the Civic Center or other city facilities. Again, we'll need to follow the requirements and guidelines from the state as we consider these issues and make decisions. And once those decisions have been made, we'll inform our community. We're having staff already starting looking into these things. There's not a lot of information out there about reopening of city halls or having in-person meetings. We're gathering as much as we possibly can. We are into phase 3. We're going to try to maintain that. And there might be limited possibilities into the future to start looking at some of those meetings. But right now, we're still projecting it's an internal date that we've established of May 3rd to start beginning the process. But that'll be subject to change as we continue into these issues with the state. And we'll let the council know, hopefully well enough in advance that we can have you folks make adjustments to your schedules as well. Along with that, we've done an additional round of workstation upgrades that are being ordered for the Civic Center. They're mostly improvements to the engineering and community development reception areas and our upstairs administrative areas. These improvements include cubicle height improvements and protective plexiglass shielding to comply with Washington State labor and industries requirements. The previous workstation upgrades that we've already implemented were reimbursed via our round 2 of the CARES Act funds, and we anticipate a FEMA grant that will cover the next round of improvements. If anybody have any questions about any of that, I'd be happy to entertain that. I see Councilor Abersal's got his hand up.
Yeah, am I free to speak now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will just say I applaud us trying to get back. I just feel that it is still, in my opinion, too early. I'm seeing all these news reports that are saying, you know, everyone's saying let's return to normal, but we need to pause that and slow down because still the variants are out there. There are, I believe, 15 states in the United States now that their trajectory has stopped declining and has, in some cases, are now starting to go back up. And I think that we could be adding to the fire by opening up too soon, in my opinion.
Thank you. We intend to take everything. We are just starting the discussions. We are not planning, but we're anticipating the possibility of perhaps starting around May 3rd. That's if everything's a go. We're going to obviously have approvals from the state and the Department of Labor and Industries to even consider these things. And the Department of Health will have a lot to say about this. We have to ensure our employee safety. We'd have to ensure the safety of people coming back if they're coming back for meetings. We have to ensure the safety of the public. There's one potential issue that I need to make everybody aware of, and that's our municipal court. We do not have jurisdiction over the municipal court. That's a separate body, and there's a possibility that since they use our council chambers, that they might come back sooner than other, as far as reopening of the Civic Center for the public or reopening for the public meetings and in-person meetings, as well as our employees. That one's obviously still in flux. We're still working. I've asked the court, the judge, what they would need to reopen, but so far I have not heard back. But that one's, I know of other cities, municipal courts, where they've had to open up the court and they've had to make special arrangements for that. But that might be the only exception at this time. And I'll let the folks know if that should start to occur, or if we're informed that they want to open up court for having in-person trials. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to open up public comment for items that are not on the agenda. City Administrator Bob Larson, were there some written public comments that came in?
Yes, we received 2. I'll be happy to read those at this time. First one is the first one is from Peter Fraser. He says, Mayor and council members, my name is Peter Fraser. He gives his address of 3414 59th Street Court, Gig Harbor. And I'm writing to voice my support for installing sidewalks along both sides of 38th Avenue between Hunt and 56th Streets in Gig Harbor. This section of 38th Avenue is now a major corridor and the most direct route for vehicles going between Walatcha Drive and 56th Street, with new homes going up by Hunt Street and 46th Avenue and Scansey Avenue, as well as the 38th Avenue and Hunt Street. There will be even more vehicles in the future. For the safety of our citizens, it is vital to have sidewalks along both sides of 38th Avenue. I also want to voice my support for a possible resolution to approve the 5 projects under consideration, which include sidewalks along 38th Avenue for federal infrastructure earmarks. Thank you to the members of the Public Works Committee, including Councilors Bob Himes and Robin Denson. I think she believed, I'm just going to read it as it is, for advocating for this project, as well as Jeff Langhelm and anyone else who worked on this. It is much appreciated. I think you might be referring to Robin Denson as being part of the interlocal government.
Thank you.
Our interlocal government group. He says, thank you for all your time and your work on behalf of Gig Harbor, Peter Fraser. The second one was submitted by Marlene Drucker on behalf of several folks who I'm going to read at the end of the letter, but it's entitled Pedestrian and Cyclist Advisory. We are disappointed that despite the efforts of some council members, the City of Gig Harbor City Council has decided that it is not a priority this year to establish a pedestrian and cyclist advisory committee. Too much of our public space that is meant to serve people who walk and bike has been built without consulting people who walk and bike. This has resulted in poorly conceived infrastructure that ends up going largely unused and is often dangerous by design. Where pedestrian and cyclist committees exist in our state, they give voice to citizens who have real life experience with design options for people on foot or wheels. They help guide decision makers spending to establish a network for non-motorized travel that is usable for people of all ages and abilities, thereby profoundly improving quality of life, public health and safety, and making walking and biking a viable and pleasant transportation option for some trips. We look forward to council and staff reviewing and revising public works standards for street design, and we're heartened that council decided that people who walk and bike will be invited into this process as an ad hoc committee. This is a step in the right direction, which we hope will result in future projects functioning better for people outside of motor vehicles. Those of us who currently walk and bike have noticed deficiencies in the built environment in our city, which could cause collisions involving people who walk and bike. We feel it is our duty to make public record of these problems and ask the city to remedy them before serious collisions occur. We are asking others who live here to join us in documenting current unsafe conditions and making their findings specific hazards part of the public record by submitting them as written and or spoken comments. A problem that might be a near miss for one user might cause a life-changing or life-ending incident for another. Hearing these safety concerns would be part of the work of a pedestrian and cyclist advisory committee, but while the city of Gig Harbor has not yet established a permanent committee, we will bring these concerns directly to City Council and the Public Works Committee. We're asking other citizens to join us in these efforts to improve safety in our city. You will be hearing from us and we hope from others about specific concerns in the future. Thank you for your time and consideration. We look forward to partnering with our elected officials to make the place we live better for everyone here. And it includes Arlene Drucker, Roger Henderson, Nick Tarabocia, Doug Terrian, Tommy Kent Smith, Carrie Heber, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Carlos Jabak, Max and Jamie Bell, Katiana Hebden, Dave Blanding, Jeff Bruin, Sue King, and Dave Wittenberg. Mayor, that concludes the written comments on items that are not on the agenda.
Okay. Now we now open up to people that are calling in. People that are calling in, you can press *9 on your phone, and then refrain from raising your hand until, okay. So you may have to press *6 to unmute yourself. And again, you have 3 minutes, and please, and I will want you to adhere to the 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address. And Mr. Wick, you're first up.
Ah, you know my name. That's good. Hey, it's Thomas Wick, and my address is Hunt Street Northwest, Gig Harbor, 98335. My public comment this evening, and that's kind of in the open realm, is actually associated, Mayor Kuhn, with your departure at the end of your term, and quite possibly and likely Mr. Larson's as well. So under your leadership, under the strong mayor form of government, you allowed a development to start and to continue uphill from us, absent a drainage to accommodate the runoff that's going to discharge from it. And I couldn't help but notice this evening, and you do this at the start of every city council meeting, you did the Pledge of Allegiance. And the last thing you said during the Pledge of Allegiance is justice for all. That was your last words. And allowing that development to continue, absent knowing that there is no drainage to accommodate it on our downhill properties, knowing that the discharge outfall location is actually a Pierce County confirmed wetland, and that it's actually a salmon recovery stream. It's a natural stream that actually, per DNR's water typing, has protections under the Endangered Species Act for salmon and orca. You allowed that to continue. And I have a very specific concern tonight, is that learning that you're leaving, but as of today, construction appears to be accelerating above us in the Scanty Avenue drainage, and there is no drainage to accommodate it. So I don't really know how to respond or how to react. My father-in-law and I, we brought forward a solution that would have allowed the Gig Harbor, the city, you guys, to correct an injustice, and it fell on deaf ears. There's been no response. And from my perspective, allowing construction to continue when you know it will damage downstream properties, it is a crime. The last time I checked, the deliberate destruction of private properties is a crime. And as everybody knows, I offered twice, my father-in-law, $10,000 we offered to pay the city to do a drainage evaluation. In two different junctures in this timeline, neither was even acknowledged. So I'm asking City Council and you, Mayor Kuhn, to take whatever actions you need to do to make sure there's an immediate stop work order for construction within the Scansey Avenue drainage, pending the identification of an appropriate and an adequate drainage to accommodate development. And again, I couldn't help but I pinged right in on your Pledge of Allegiance this evening, because the last words you said was "injustice for all." And my expectation is that if you refuse to do this, I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear those words at the next City Council.
I'm letting you finish up your 3 minutes since you're past. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I ask that City Council please make sure the stop work order take whatever actions you need to make sure that's initiated immediately. Please and thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to raise their hand to speak? Okay, I will close the public comment. For those that may be joining us, we already did new business 1. And so we're on to new business. There is no old business. So we're on to new business number 2, which is public hearing and first reading of ordinances, city assumption of the Transportation Benefit District. Report is our finance director, David Rodenbach.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is kind of like a housekeeping item. And we set the public hearing for tonight, if you remember, at the last council meeting with our resolution. And what this ordinance will do is have the city council assume all rights, powers, functions, and obligations of the Gig Harbor Transportation Benefit District. It'll negate the need to run 2 separate meetings of the same body for 2 separate legal corporations. And so we'd be absorbing the district as a separate fund of the city. And so that's pretty much all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we need to hold a public hearing and then a second reading of this ordinance.
Okay, any clarifying questions from council? Councilmember Markley.
Yes, thank you. In section 4 of the ordinance under debts and obligations, it just says the last sentence, or I guess it's the only sentence, the city hereby assumes and agrees to provide for the payment of all of the indebtedness of the Transportation Benefit District, including the payment and retirement of outstanding general obligation and revenue bonds issued by the Transportation Benefit District, should any exist. So my question just was, does any debt exist that we're absorbing?
No, there's no debt we're absorbing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? Okay.
Mayor?
Yes. Go ahead, Councilmember Franich.
Thank you. I see some new information that wasn't in the last time we discussed this. 110 of the districts, 82 of these, the city have assumed the TBD powers. Is there any cons to the city assuming them?
I personally don't see any, but time will tell. Maybe there would be, but it's pretty simple. The city it's contiguous with the city, so every decision made by the district affects the city in the same way. The same legislative body makes the decisions for both the district and for the city. So essentially, I don't see a downside. I only see upside, in that you're making yourselves more efficient.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other council comments, so we will open up the public comment. Were there any written public comments? Bob Larson?
No, there were not, Mayor.
Okay. I will now proceed to the callers. I would like, this is pertaining to this council bill. So please direct your comments to the council bill. Mr. Wick.
Yes, Mayor Kuhn, thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council. So I'm going to direct this directly to this bill, but I'm also going to provide some supporting comment on why I'm objecting to it, which hopefully you would not object to. So I do not believe this bill should be approved. And here's why. I'm looking down here and it says, whereas RCW 36.74.020 provides that. And that's my concern. So the city of Gig Harbor is quoting RCW. They're quoting state law and the justification or, that authorizes, right? And the concern is that Gig Harbor does not acknowledge the RCWs, the laws, the state of Washington laws consistently. And that's why I don't believe it's appropriate to approve this. And the second concern I have is after just listening to almost, 2 hours? And I believe Councilman Himes made a comment about how the Gateway was going to have a field day with this last 2 hours of deliberation. I don't want to misquote him, but he said something to that effect. I think for the city to take on any additional powers would be, given the current state of dysfunction, would be inappropriate at this time. And I don't think any of the council members would actually disagree with me regarding the state of dysfunction. So I look at this and I see giving the city of Gig Harbor more power when, from my perspective, those powers have been abused. And they've been abused at the detriment of the public. So I would ask that City Council refrain from approving this, and I would ask them to delay the approval of this. And that's all I have to say on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Okay, we will close the public comment, and this will come back for a second reading. We will go on to the third council bill, which is first reading of ordinance amending the 2021 budget. Dave Rodenbach, our finance director.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is an ordinance during the budget process, very late in the budget process, towards the night before or weekend before the final reading of the budget. One of the contracts, I believe, came through, and then before the end of the year, another one came through, and so this really is just a cleanup to change attachment A to the budget ordinance. Excuse me. This is to change attachment A to the original budget ordinance to reflect the correct salaries for members of the Teamsters Local 117, which is police, and Teamsters 117 non-supervisory employees union. The other union, I believe, is still in negotiation. And the budgetary impact at this time, monetarily, I believe is not significant enough to require a budget amendment to the actual numbers. If it is, you'll see me back in November, and we'll be talking about this again for a budget amendment that probably will require a public hearing. So with that, that's all I have. Any questions, I'm happy to entertain.
Thank you. Councilmember Pranich.
Thank you. So Dave, it says in the information in background that these unions have changed due to completion of the negotiations, but there's no expenditure required. Is that the case?
Well, no, of course that's not the case. As I just said, the increases to the contracts I don't believe are significant enough at this time to warrant a monetary budget amendment.
And what is that amount?
I don't know.
You don't know how much it's increasing the budget by?
The percentages have been looked at and I don't see them being significant enough. We have a large enough cushion within the funds to which these salaries are charged to accommodate this. The actual efficacy of the raises, that's been negotiated. They are what they are.
I understand that, but I mean, I would think that you would have the number that's attached to that.
No, I don't have the staff to calculate the exact monetary impact of that. If council wishes, we can calculate that, but it's kind of moot information. Like at this time, it's a little more important for me to be getting these ordinances through to change this, to consolidate the TBD and to do the financial statements and manage the audit. I don't have the time to look back on what this is going to be when it's not going to impact the bottom line.
Boy, find that a little troubling.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Again, we have to stick to the subject at hand. 3 minutes. Mr. Wick, your 3 minutes.
Yes, Mayor Kuhn, ladies and gentlemen of the council, this is Thomas Wick again, Hunt Street. You know, I'm looking through some of these, and I'm keeping this comment directly related to this, just so don't get excited on me here. But I'm looking at some of these wages and salaries for some of these personnel, and I'm excluding the police because I think they earn every penny. In fact, I think they should be paid more. But I'm looking at some of these people, and I'm looking at some of these people that were instrumental in some of the things that I've experienced, witnessed, and seen in Gig Harbor. And from a citizen's perspective, I don't see how somebody could be paid $150,000+ a year and sign off on a development using a public roadway as a emergency storm overflow. That doesn't make sense to me. Or why untreated sewage is washing into Gig Harbor and employees are paid big bucks and they're saying, hey, we have capacity, but how would they not know? And they're in a position to know. And I'm alerting Gig Harbor's leadership to, like, for example, sidewalks covered with wet leaves.
So we're talking about the salary. We're talking about
well, I'm explaining.
We're talking about sidewalk.
Fair enough, Mayor. Yes, we are, and I'm explaining why. My position statement is I believe these people are being paid excessively, many of them in leadership positions, and I have to be able to explain why. That is fair. That is fair. Would you agree?
Somewhat. Go on.
Okay. So I'm walking down the street and I see culverts plugged ahead of heavy rains, and I reach out to Gig Harbor to alert them. But I see people, Gig Harbor staff, driving around in red trucks all the time, and they drive right past them. Why don't they see this? And then again, I was talking about the sidewalk before you interrupted me. I'm like, this is just downhill from a retirement community. Sidewalk covered with wet, rotting leaves. And I'm going to myself, I see trucks, I'm walking up it or around it, and I see Gig Harbor staff driving up and down Rosedale all the time. It doesn't register. So when I see multiple Gig Harbor personnel, you guys are giving them pay bumps and you're talking about salary increases. As a citizen, I sit back and I go, okay, is that justified? I mean, when people are reviewing storm drainage plans for developments, what degree of competence is actually can be expected? So I see a lot of money going out for a lot. And again, I'm excluding the police because I support the police wholeheartedly. But based on what I've seen, I do not approve any salary increases. Again, excluding the police. So that concludes my public comment. And thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Right. Yeah, and I will have to say, I do need you to stick to the 3. All 3 times I've let you go past the 3. So I can't just keep doing it. So I don't like to cut off people, but if it's always, I have no choice. So please try to stick to the 3 minutes. Okay, any other public comment from callers? Okay, Bob, did anyone write any comments that you need to read?
Did not receive any written comments, Mayor, on this.
Okay, close the public comment, and we will move that to the second reading at the next council meeting. Thank you. Our fourth and final new council bill is first reading of Ordinance Ancich Waterfront Overwater Structures. Report from our Public Works Director, Jeff Langhill.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As we've previously discussed, the city has separate rules and code requirements for its general park operations than it does for the overwater structures. And that's due to the fact that the overwater structures have specialized use and enforcement in them. The path that we've followed to develop this new code for the piers at Ancich Waterfront Park began in February. It led us to our March 4th study session. And then we're here tonight with a revised first reading of an ordinance. Just as a reminder, this ordinance refers to just the 3 overwater structures at Ancich Waterfront Park that exist today. These 3 structures are the Ancich Pier, the Ancich Net Shed, and the Jerkovich Pier. The rules for any future structures that are built at that site would either need to come back at a later date and amend the sections of code that are being adopted or create new sections of code, however council would like to do that. So talking about these 3 new chapters that are being created with this proposed ordinance, based on our March 4th study session, we did take each of the separate facilities and create its own chapter in the municipal code for them. The same 3 that I just outlined. So generally, the version that you have before you, it's supported by staff as written. So I have to say, Chief BUC and I have continued to consider revisions to the penalties and remedies section that's in chapter 8.26. That's the net shed chapter. Because we're still trying to see if there's a better way to determine a path to possess items that are left in the net shed so that the city could obtain those. It could be vessels, could be vehicles, could be gear, could be nets, all those items that could be left inside the net shed. But because time is of the essence to get this ordinance adopted so the fishermen can then start using the net shed, the pier, we proceeded with the version you have written. If there are any changes that we have, we would definitely show those to you coming back for a second reading at hopefully at the April 12th council meeting. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It's Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Larson. You answered some of my questions by clarifying that this doesn't have anything to do with any potential commercial fishing pier. It's just what's there now. So that was really helpful. I did have a question about the commercial activity, which is in 2 different sections, 8.25090, and then it shows up later in 8.26080. I think you're missing a word in 8.25090 in that first sentence, performed by commercial fishing. I think it should say operators after that, so that parallels the other one. And then I thought that we discussed making sure that the business is somehow fishing related. And I still think that's kind of a good idea to make clear in both of those sections. I mean, it's kind of assumed because it's performed by commercial fishing operators, but it could be any business. And I think we want it commercial fishing related or fishing related.
Yeah, actually, we've talked about that a little bit as this was being developed, because we were trying to figure out if that would be best to put in code or best to put in the use authorizations. And at this point, we were going to put that into code, but it's a very good point. If council would like to prefer to see that in code, we could do that. But we thought it was best suited for the use authorizations.
Okay, Councilmember Hyams.
Yes. First of all, this document reads much better with these things broken into separate entities. And I'm sure going forward, when it comes time to amend these things based on things being built and things being learned, I think this is going to pay great dividends. It's much simpler. It's great. The only item I had is the prior document had storage restrictions, and my assumption is, and by the way, it's disappeared, and storage of nets and stuff in the net shed. You had a time period called you were allowed a maximum amount. Is that now in the authorizations?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, great. That's all I have.
Okay.
Great. Any other clarifying questions? Okay. I will open up the public comment. Bob, were there any written public comments?
No, there were not, Mayor.
Okay. We will pertain to the subject with the public comments. We'll go to our callers. Mr. Wick, you're up.
Hey, thank you. Thank you again, Mayor Kuhn, ladies and gentlemen of the council. The concern I have is 8.25.110 penalties and remedies. And the reason I bring that up this evening is I just recently found out from an EPA certified watershed manager that that the Department of Ecology, Pierce County, the DNR, Army Corps of Engineers, pretty much no one has authority to initiate penalties or remedies against the city of Gig Harbor. And the reason it's relevant to this specific issue is that you guys specifically talk about violations of this chapter would be deemed a public nuisance under RCW, again, a Washington state law. And you specifically talk about the safety, health, morals, and general welfare of the city. And that's concerning to me because Mayor Kuhn, you personally, as you know, I sent you photographs of the end result of development occurring uphill from us within Gig Harbor city limits and inconsistent with state and federal law. But I see you guys here under 8.25.110, you're ready to club a citizen over the head for a $100 fine if they violate Gig Harbor Municipal Code. That is an inconsistency that troubles me beyond belief. So on one side of town, it's like lights out. We don't want to know. We don't want to hear. We're not going to listen. In fact, I was actually told by this individual that nobody is going to listen to you. No one. You're just the squeaky wheel and that no one's going to listen to you. And I went, interesting. I said, what about state and federal law? You know, it seems like that wouldn't be an option not to listen if what's happening is in violation of state and federal law. So again, the point of my discussion this evening on this specific issue is the penalties and remedies that the city is endowing themselves with for a violation of Gig Harbor Municipal Code, yet I don't seeing them show an ounce of concern or for state and federal law. And it also appears that Gig Harbor's concern for the community and the citizens stops at the Gig Harbor Pierce County line. And so I would ask that the city council have some discussion about that. And I thank you very much for allowing me to provide public comment this evening. Thank you. That concludes my comment.
Thank you for staying in that 3 minutes, Mr. Wick. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment that's calling in? Okay, we will close the public comment. That's first reading. That will move to second reading. Council reports and council comments, or council reports and comments. We have the Public Works Committee, Councilmember Franich. Oh, he just stepped up for a moment. We will come right back to him. The Board and Commission Candidate Review Committee, Councilmember Aversel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a commission candidate review committee meeting Monday, March 15th. We went over the call to order. Councilmember Wilk approved the minutes. We reviewed the suggested interview questions, and we had 5 applicants to interview. We were able to come to consensus, and we have recommended that we bring before the council Anastasia Wright, Ben Lawrence, and Mary Barber for the Parks Commission. And then for the LTAC committee, James Carver and John Moist are being submitted for your approval, which I believe we approved this evening, except for Ben Lawrence. That'll come, I believe, maybe the next council meeting. And that concludes my information. Except, let me check my side here. Nope, that was it. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Eversold. We've got Public Works Committee, Councilmember Ancich.
Yes, we met on Tuesday, March 9th, and we had a discussion about the art installation at when the Harborview Drive Stinson intersection improvements will be done. It appears that there will be the art installation that will be taking place there is going to be something that is going to be incorporated in the sidewalk itself. So that'll be interesting to see how that, what that looks like moving forward. And then we had a discussion about school impact fees, park impact fees, and transportation impact fees. Where we are as far as what the rates that we're charging right now and what we took in last year on those 3 different impact fees.
Great, thank you. We had the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Kuhn. Yes, there's a lot going on, obviously, because the legislative session is in full swing. On the federal level, as you all know, we submitted 3 projects to Senator Murray for consideration for some federal funding: the sports complex, Burnham sidewalks, and 38th Street Phase 2. Just on Sunday, we submitted 2 projects to Representative Kilmer's office, and that's the Borgen 16 roundabout metering and the Wagner-Walachit intersection. Those were the 5 projects that council approved. So those are the ones that we were able to submit for these special funding streams. We believe that Senator Cantwell will also have an opportunity for federal funding sometime in April. So we'll be looking at what she's looking for and weighing it against the worth and liabilities that come with federal funding to make that decision. And thanks to Mr. Langhelm for quickly putting together a lot of information for this most recent Representative Kilmer project, as well as the Murray project in the past. In terms of the state level, the state budget has wholly rebounded, which is amazing, but that's because of the federal stimulus. So it's not like this is sustainable money in the future. We need to be watching that, but the state budget is in good shape. We are not sure where the sports complex is in terms of its potential for being funded, but it looks pretty good. In terms of transportation, we heard that Senator Randall has all of our projects in the Senate transportation proposal. We don't know about the House side, but we're optimistic that Representative Young and oh my gosh, Caldier are also advocating. We know that they're advocating for this. So hopefully we'll hear good news for them. And then a couple of bills that we've been following, the multifamily tax exemption program. We have discovered that we are actually eligible to use this program should we wish. So maybe we'll talk about that in the future. The bill regarding Open Public Meeting Act, making it easier for us in emergencies to meet virtually, is moving forward. And then because of the transportation budget, it looks like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge toll potentially will only go up to its limit of 25 cents and not beyond that, which apparently was a possibility. So that was good news as well. Continuing to monitor all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Jensen. Other council comments? Councilmember Himes. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go.
I believe Friday, all the council members received an email from Camille Borders, and it listed the open positions and including new positions. And I looked at that list and I started counting how many were on there. And I think there were 12, if I remember correctly, 12 open positions, which by the way is about 10% of your firepower is in some form of transition, okay? I think 2 of them were temporary, if I recall, or seasonal, but the rest appeared to be for real employees. And I guess the only reason I bring it up is as we continue to stack new things on staff. And by the way, I will, I'm sure Bob Larson, you're aware of this, but as you go forward in your study on the survey and the leadership thing, that you keep that in mind. Called we're already entering this phase without a full deck. Called we're down, okay, and then you get into the question, well, do you want to get the work done, or do you want happy to, it's a tough decision. It is not a slam dunk in terms of, yeah, we're going to go do this, but we don't know how to contain it, okay? So I just throw that out there. I personally am going to have a problem if we say, well, we got to defer more things from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it looks good for the credibility of the council. I don't think it looks good for the credibility of the city, but I have a real fear that could happen as we go forward. So I would just ask for some restraints in the additional things that we approve. Thank you.
So, there's more than 4 positions that are seasonal, but I do want to mention, I saw today that there's seasonal hires, and Jeff, aren't we hiring 8 seasonals?
Correct. This year we're hiring 8 seasonals. Yes, fully
Right.
staffed.
So, I mean, there's more than 4 of the other Councilmember Himes, but we do, just so everyone knows, every year we hire 8 seasonal workers. And then they usually go back to college or whatever else they were doing because it's summer.
But those 8 seasonal workers were not on Camille Borders' list, correct?
I think they were listed as one position. I can go take a look.
Okay.
I think they were listed as one position.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good clarity. Councilmember Franich.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm pretty pleased. Every time I review the capital improvement projects list, it seems like we are on a timeline to get our major goals done at this point in time anyway. So I'm thankful for that. And as far as the state budget goes, state revenues are actually up well over 4% this year without any of the irresponsible $350 million that the federal government is giving to the state. So that's good news for the state that our revenues were up that much in a COVID year. So other than that, new business number 1, I've still got some real problems with the way that turned out. And I am going to be very interested to have, when Molly listens to that tape, to find out actually how many amendments were made and seconded that did not get to a vote before a lot more discussion and confusion came on. And I think that I'm very disappointed in our stand-in city attorney for not following that, because there were some very glaring errors made during that process, and it's not good.
Okay, any other council comments? Okay, we have announcements of other meetings. City Council special meeting is Tuesday, tomorrow, March 23rd at noon. at noon. That's with some of our legislators. Then we have a city council work session Thursday, March 25th.
Mayor,
Again,
if I could clarify that, that's also a special meeting that got changed last week. It's going to be at 3:30 with one of our state representatives. It's a council special meeting again on Thursday, the 25th at 3:30.
okay, it says 3 o'clock right now. It's not, it's 3:30.
It's at 3:30, yes.
Okay.
The original
so-
study session was scheduled for 3, but we changed that. We had actually canceled that meeting and then in its place put this special meeting at 3:30 with Representative Young.
Okay. And the one Tuesday is with
Senator
Javier,
Randall and
as well as
Representative
Emily.
Javier.
Yep. And then we have the Planning and Building Committee on Monday, March 5th at 3 p.m.
Mayor, if I could again clarify that I believe is a typographical error. It should be April 5th. Sorry about that. Apologize. I just caught it tonight.
Okay, the Planning and Building Committee is April 5th. Okay.
I apologize. I apologize.
No worries.
I'm the one that reviewed the agenda, so I should have caught
Hey,
it.
if that's all I had to worry about, I wouldn't have anything to worry about. I think we have, let's see. We have 3 weeks between now and the next council meeting. So everyone get a good night's rest. And thank you all. And then can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to
Move to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Oh, I thought you guys all wanted to stay longer. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank
Meeting
you.
adjourned.
Bye.
Aye.
Thank you, Carrie.